With any success in any medium, a sequel is sure to follow, and Dead Rising was no different. When a game that was such a hit on release provided such a unique experience when it came to zombie slaying and delivers a semi-grounded story that took itself seriously, obviously fans wanted more. Dead Rising 2 delivers more in the zombie slaying goodness, but doesn't quite hit in terms of story and writing. When it comes to the nearly 10-year-long hiatus this franchise was in, did Dead Rising 2 lay the foundation for this? Dead Rising 2's development started as early as February 2008, with a Western developer rumored to be behind the helm of development this time instead of Capcom, a Vancouver-based studio known as Blue Castle Games. They were mainly known for their successful run of baseball games, like the Bigs, and you're never gonna believe it, the Bigs 2, but now it seemed that they were taking on the challenge of developing an open-world zombie game in an already well-known Capcom franchise. Obviously Capcom would be overseeing development this time around, but the onus was on Blue Castle to make it work. There wasn't a lot of information about the game leading up to its announcement, but there was a leak in December 2008 that gave us a bit more insight as to how the world of Dead Rising has evolved past the initial Willamette incident. It also gave us our first insight as to where the game would be taking place, an environment reminiscent of Las Vegas, complete with a casino. So you know I was all over that, baby. Gambler's pride, baby. Almost a year to the date of the initial rumors of the game's development, Dead Rising 2 was officially announced in February of 2009, complete with some beta screenshots that showed off our new, at the time, unnamed protagonist. In the same month, Inafune would confirm the casino-themed setting and state that Blue Castle was serious and determined about making a Dead Rising game with that signature Capcom spice intact, which was the reason for the changeover. March 2009 is when we got a bit more detail as to how many characters could be on screen at once. While Dead Rising 1 had an impressive 800, Dead Rising 2 was said to be able to show 6,000 characters on screen at once. Co-producer Shin Ohara alludes to the technology used for Dead Rising 1 having some limitations surrounding zombie count, and that theoretically, Dead Rising 2 has no limit. April 2009 is when the world was first shown Dead Rising 2 at Captivate 09 in Las Vegas, and we got a glimpse into how the game has changed from its predecessor. The Las Vegas theme rang true, there seemed to be plenty of casinos around, as we got to see our new protagonist, Chuck Green, do what Dead Rising protagonists do best. Notably, the trailer reveals that Chuck is both a great father and an excellent handyman, two extremely important aspects of his character that would affect the game of Dead Rising 2 itself. It even gave us a first glimpse of combo weapons with the now iconic paddle saw, and even combo vehicles with the slicercle, showing how it can rack up a very impressive kill count very easily. The footage was enough to get people excited, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about the game between now and its release. There was the announcement of a prequel, Case Zero, but we'll talk about that shortly. In the meantime, the hype for the game was building, as it seemed to be an overall improvement from the previous game, with more to do, more zombies, gambling, more ways to kill zombies, gambling, more to explore, and of course, gambling. Dead Rising 1 was unique, and Dead Rising 2 sought to build upon that uniqueness by giving the players more to do and more ways to kill zombies, and making zombie killing more fun and experimental this time around, as well as building upon the lore of the franchise as well. It was looking like Dead Rising 2 would surpass the original in terms of popularity quite easily. The prequel to Dead Rising 2, Case Zero, was released on August 31st, 2010, just over a month before the full game had released. It was a $5 hour-long expansion that allowed players to dip their toes into what the full game might be like. Taking place between Dead Rising 1 and 2, it follows our new protagonist, Chuck Green, fleeing from Las Vegas after an outbreak occurs that leaves his daughter Katie infected and his wife Pam dead. They stop in the small town of Still Creek, needing to refuel and stock up on supplies. Since Katie is infected, she requires a dose of Zombrex every 12 hours to prevent her from turning, and after giving her her first dose and exploring the deserted gas station, his truck is stolen and Chuck and Katie are left stranded. Taking refuge in the now barricaded gas station, Chuck starts to search the small town for more Zombrex, as Katie will need her second dose soon. In his exploration, he finds an overturned ambulance with Zombrex inside, and overhearing on a radio of a nearby soldier's corpse, that backup cleanup crew will arrive at 9 PM. He then finds a motorbike that he feels can be repaired, and now it's a race against the clock to repair the bike and get out before the military arrives. There are 5 parts the bike will need to be repaired, and Chuck will be able to find these around the town, also finding a handful of survivors that he can save as well. After finding all the necessary parts to fix the bike, Chuck is met with Jed, the game's only psychopath. He insists on shooting Katie as she is infected. Chuck tells him to piss off, and eventually, after a scrap, Jed is crushed by a car. There are multiple endings, of course, but they're either Chuck did not give Katie her Zombrex, shit father alert, or the military arrives before the bike is fixed and Katie is taken away. The proper ending involves Chuck and Katie hopping on the now fixed bike and hightailing it out of Still Creek as the military tries to stop them. Finally escaped from Still Creek and on the road, Chuck finds his stolen truck with the thief now dead in the driver's seat. Chuck reclaims his things like Katie's epic Puff Puff backpack, Zombrex, and the now iconic motocross jacket, before reassuring Katie that he'll always be there to keep her safe, as they ride off. I got a fucking foot cramp. How fucking out of shape am I? I get a fucking foot cramp filming a stupid ass fucking YouTube video. Oh shit, that hurts. Overall, Case Zero does a pretty good job at introducing players to what Dead Rising 2 would be like, in a small environment that allows them to become more accustomed with the game's new core mechanics before you hit the big time, as well as give some further context to Chuck and Katie's relationship as well. The setting, Still Creek, there's not a lot to say. It's a very small and desolate town lacking a lot of detail, which makes Dead Rising games really notable, but you know, I guess it's fine enough. It's only an hour-long game. Like, what more can you really fucking expect? It's short, sharp, and sweet, and you cannot play it unless you have an Xbox, which fucking sucks because it was never re-released anywhere else. It introduced some of the new mechanics that Dead Rising 2 was going to focus on, like combo weapons, did it in a controlled and unique environment not seen in the full game. It was only $5, so you weren't really going to be losing much if you didn't like it, and you could even carry over your progress into the main game, which wasn't too far away. On September 24th, 2010, Dead Rising 2 was officially released, taking place 3 years after the events of Case Zero and 5 after the events of the original Dead Rising 1. Taking place in Fortune City, Nevada, it follows our protagonist, Chuck Green, and his daughter Katie, as he's competing in a game show, Terror is Reality, hosted by Tyrone King, or TK, in order to scrounge up some prize money for Katie's Zombrex. This show is very weird, as it implies that zombies are so commonplace now that we make entertainment out of it. So much so that we have stadiums full of people just watching zombies get slaughtered. It kind of feels like shit to know that nothing Frank did in Dead Rising 1 even mattered, but to be fair, the game kind of expressly told you that. Anyway, Chuck wins the show and in the locker room catches a report of the zombie rights group, Cure, protesting the show, citing unethical treatment of zombies. You know, Dead Rising is really funny in the sense that some of the more clearly meant to be absurd things the game presents to you feel more realistic as time goes on. This fucking old bitch in the first game dooming everyone in the mall just to try and save her demonic Satan spawn dog. I wouldn't have believed you if I played this in fucking 2006, right? But like now, oh yeah, I totally fucking believe it. People advocating for the ethical rights of zombies? Yeah, no, that is totally fucking plausible. I actually quite understand the point of this. If you think Cure's a dumb idea, wait until your fucking grandpappy gets turned into a zombie and then suddenly he's on Terror is Reality getting sawed in half by a fucking sliceable. Then we'll see who's joining fucking Cure then, huh? Anyway, as Chuck is on his way to get Katie, he's approached by TK's hostesses, Amber and Crystal, who taunt and flirt with Chuck's performance on the show. Yes, this is important to bring up, I promise. As Chuck is in the elevator to get Katie, the arena is shocked by an explosion, which lets all the zombies out and plunges Fortune City into another outbreak. As Chuck fights his way to the green room, get it! To get Katie and escape the arena, they find refuge in the Fortune City emergency shelter, where he is immediately confronted by a guard named Sullivan about Katie's condition, noticing her bite wound. Chuck reassures him that he has Zombrex for her before being told the military will come in 3 days to evacuate everyone, and that he better have enough to last. Chuck and Katie camp out in the security room, where it's revealed that he actually has no Zombrex at all, to which Stacy Forsyth pipes up and tells him where he can find some more back in the mall. Stacy guides Chuck to a nearby pharmacy being ransacked by fucking hoodlums before beating the shit out of them and getting some Zombrex. As Chuck comes back to administer Katie her dose, they share a sweet little moment where Katie shows off her cool new power in Mega Man. This really isn't all that important, I just really like this moment. Once you give Katie her first dose, the game immediately goes into the main story, but we'll take the time now to talk about the game's setting and atmosphere. One thing that I neglected to talk about in my last video was the HUD and how that aesthetically ties in to what character we're playing as. Comparing the HUD from 1 to 2, it's quite different. Dead Rising 1's HUD is clean and refined, very reminiscent of a broadcast. When you pause the game, you have this globe that looks like Drama Alert's pure of heart cousin. It represents Frank's occupation perfectly, a journalist. Dead Rising 2, however, is messier, less refined, dirty even. Compare the two and it's night and day, and it represents Chuck's occupation perfectly as well, while still feeling very familiar. I love it because it perfectly separates Frank and Chuck from each other. And aesthetically, these are fantastic. I love that they're not traditional, and I've always loved the cubes that Dead Rising uses over any traditional health bar. It helps to make it stand out. It'd be a damn shame if they ever got rid of them. Setting wise, Fortune City is not Las Vegas, but pretty damn close. It is, however, trying to replicate Las Vegas on account of Las Vegas falling to an outbreak 3 years prior. It's an adult amusement park and resort, and much bigger than the Willamette Mall. While Willamette had 8 distinct areas, Fortune City has 12. While visually striking, it's just not as interesting as the Willamette Mall was, because too much of it feels the same. There are 4 main casinos in the game, with 2 smaller ones in the Platinum and Silver Strip, so all up there are 6 casinos in the game. While aesthetically they are quite different, functionally they're the same, and having 6 of them loses that uniqueness. Like, imagine if Paradise Plaza and Alfresco Plaza also had a roller coaster ride in it. Now Wonderland Plaza loses its uniqueness because it's not the only one that has one. Yeah, it ties into the whole theme, I agree, but did we really need 6 fucking casinos to do this? Maybe I'm just nitpicking and I don't understand because I've never been to Las Vegas, but I feel like if we had 2 major casinos that were expanded upon and kept these 2 smaller casinos, that might be better, and let the casinos really stand out instead of kind of blur together. I get there needed to be a lot of areas in the game that gave you opportunities to gather money to accommodate for the implementation of that system, but there are opportunities to get money literally fucking everywhere. We did not need 6 casinos, especially since most people will just go to the 100k payout machine anyway. There are also some areas that are far too reminiscent of Dead Rising 1. South Plaza is the biggest offender of this, feeling exactly the same as North Plaza from Dead Rising 1. It genuinely looks almost the exact fucking same. A part of the mall under construction in preparation for a big event or some shit. It's the same fucking thing. The presence that this area has in the main game is so fucking minimal. Like, it's only there to fill space and for you to point and gawk at it and go, oh shit, I remember that from the first game! Palisades Mall is almost exactly, and I mean literally fucking look, it's almost exactly the same layout as Entrance Plaza from the first game. This might just be nitpicking, I guess, sure. But if we're gonna have a bigger map to explore, I feel like the areas within that map should be fresh and new and interesting, not just reusing ideas and themes from its predecessor to fill space. The atmosphere in Dead Rising 2 just isn't the same either, and it doesn't even really come close. Because it's in Las Vegas, it's always on. Nighttime really doesn't feel like nighttime because it never feels dark enough to recapture that same feeling that it did in the original. Nighttime in Dead Rising 1 was frightening and oppressive. It was so dark it was hard to see, and the calming music of the mall had now turned off. It truly was just you and the zombies and no one else. It was terrifying. Dead Rising 2, it's never dark enough to feel that oppressive, and the music is still going regardless. Half the time, you're probably going to forget that it's even meant to be nighttime. Dead Rising 2 is not as scary as the original, and most of that can probably be attributed to being set in what is commonly known as a 24/7 city. So there's not a lot of opportunity for the game to lean into those classic horror elements that made the original's atmosphere so good in the first place. To be clear, I still quite like Fortune City, but I think a lot of it goes against what made the original's tone and atmosphere so good in the first place. In leaning more into an adult theme more than the family-friendly mall setting, the juxtaposition of the zombies in the mall really doesn't have the same effect. Dead Rising was America through the lens of a Japanese teen, whereas Dead Rising 2 is America through the lens of an American teen. And it really shows, and it just doesn't have the same charm as the original did. But it's at least trying, and I can commend it for that. It's better to try and recapture it and not quite make it than to not try at all. After giving Katie her Zombrex, Chuck and Stacy catch a report by Channel 6 Action News, led by Rebecca Chang, detailing that the outbreak that occurred during Terror is Reality was not an accident, rather an act of terrorism. Video footage from inside the arena shows a man in Chuck's game show outfit detonating a bomb that would let the zombies free, and ties Chuck and Cure into the incident, blaming both of them. Chuck is understandably upset, voicing his innocence, and it's now a classic race against time to find the evidence that proves Chuck's innocence and who's really behind this. Chuck meets up with Rebecca at the Fortune City Hotel, and as they find a security room hoping to find some footage that might clear Chuck's name, they find that everything's been destroyed, but clearly not by zombies.
No zombie did that.
Stacy calls Chuck back to the safe house as Sullivan is angry that he's housing traitors, and Sullivan utters this fantastic line,
"I saw it on the TV. Saw you, buddy. Explain how that little trick works."
Like I said, this shit just gets more and more accurate as time goes on. They strike a deal where Chuck can come and go as he pleases if he keeps bringing in survivors, but Sullivan makes it known that he won't go looking for Chuck if he doesn't come back, and won't sing any praises for him once the military arrives. Rebecca shows up wanting to work with Chuck and Stacy to figure out the truth. Soon after, Chuck and Stacy catch footage of a very organized movement of equipment in the maintenance tunnels, which Chuck soon finds out is being led by TK. As TK tries to escape via train, Chuck hops on a motorcycle used by one of TK's goons and does a cool motorcycle chase to get on the train to stop him. As he escapes and somehow feels no fucking recoil at all from these pistol shots, Chuck determines that he's the one behind the outbreak and is planning something big. As Chuck, Stacy and Rebecca discuss the logistics of TK being behind the outbreak, a loud explosion goes off where Stacy can see TK's goons trying to open the casino vaults. Chuck, naturally, puts a stop to all of it, and him and Rebecca make some references to Frank West.
Fantastic!
Don't you? Have you covered wars or something?
Reference! 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 Rebecca decides to let Chuck meet with her source finally, which turns out to be Amber and Crystal. Remember when I mentioned them back like 5 minutes ago? I told you it was important. Who fed Channel 6 Action News the footage of Chuck planting the bomb that started the outbreak. They've kidnapped Rebecca and attempt to kill Chuck, which doesn't really go as planned. Rebecca tells Chuck that she heard the twins talking about a helicopter that TK has coming in that night, attempting to steal as much money as possible and escape. They agree to meet on the bunker rooftop to see where TK's helicopter might be landing. During Katie's next Zombrex dosage, Stacy mentions Isabella and Frank, talking about how Isabella hopes to create a cure one day, and how she made the first inhibitors with Frank during the incident. It's a nice tie into the previous game and fleshes out the world a bit more, as well as makes people go, oh shit, that's why there's a fucking 2 in the title. Rebecca and Chuck catch TK's helicopter landing on the roof of the hotel, and as TK tries to escape, Chuck attaches a crane hook to it, preventing him from leaving. Fucking badass as hell, you know, like come on. After Chuck beats the fight normally and does not cheese it by using the toy spitball gun, TK is knocked unconscious as all the money he tried to steal burns away in the crash. They take him back to the safe room for questioning and make sure the world will know that he was behind this outbreak. Soon after, the military starts to roll in, led by Sergeant Dwight Boykin, and start their cleanup operation, mopping up first, then grabbing the survivors. At first, the cleanup seems to be going quite well. However, a strange green gas starts to pour out of the underground vents, mutating the zombies, making them stronger and faster, quickly cleaning up the cleanup crew. Boykin, seeing this chaos unfold, starts to lose his mind, and drives away as Rebecca follows him into the underground tunnels. Chuck attempts to go rescue her before being stopped by everyone, stating the danger he's putting himself in. Sullivan reveals there will be another rescue attempt in 24 hours, and if they can determine that there are no survivors left, Fortune City will be firebombed to wipe out the zombies. Chuck goes to rescue Rebecca anyway, which is where we're met with the best supporting character in the game, fucking 8-Ball, covering the absolute fuck out of that left flank. And Boykin as well, I suppose.
Chuck?
I'm out! Curtis, give me your weapon! You want some of this? Come get some!
After saving Rebecca due to 8-Ball not covering the right flank and making it back to the safe room, TK reveals there's more to the story here, and that in reality, he isn't behind the outbreak, more so just a pawn of it. He reveals that he didn't target Chuck specifically, rather, he was just the name that he was given. As the three discuss TK's reveal, the safe house is breached, and zombies begin to pile in. Someone's tampered with the door controls, and Chuck ventures out to hotwire the panel and close it up again. After saving the shelter, Chuck and Stacy point the blame towards Sullivan for letting this happen, as we see TK trying to escape. He's grabbed by one lone zombie left in the safe house and bitten. Sullivan explains that TK must have knocked him out and tried to escape, as TK pleads for some Zombrex. Now Chuck can decide either to give TK Zombrex or leave him to die in turn. In a news report, it's revealed that the military rescue team found the shelter overrun with zombies, determining that there were no survivors left. The government then orders the immediate firebombing of the city to eradicate the zombies. The trio determine that there's something much bigger going on here. There's no way TK could have informed the media about the lack of survivors or created the gas to mutate the zombies. He's just not that smart. Rebecca says if she can get in contact with her news station, they'll send choppers in to come save everyone and get the story out. In reviewing Rebecca's footage during the initial cleanup attempt, they determine the gas is coming from underground. No fucking shit! Like, duh! And Chuck makes way for the maintenance tunnels to learn more. Down there, Chuck finds a sealed off door guarded by more goons, and entering finds a secret laboratory with what appears to be a harvesting chamber. Guards are seen using high-frequency shockwave guns to easily kill zombies and harvest the adult queens that escape their bodies once they die. Chuck finds some scientists talking about the success of the gas, as it apparently leads to queens maturing 10 times as fast as usual. Are you picking it up now? Chuck finds a laptop that reveals Phenotrans is behind the whole thing. Phenotrans manufactures Zombrex, and if you remember, Isabella managed to create the initial dose of Zombrex for Frank and Willamette using adult queens. So it's all adding up. Phenotrans uses Fortune City as a scapegoat to manufacture queens at a higher rate than normal in order to create more Zombrex. Additionally, the scare of yet another outbreak creates more demand for that product, especially since, as Rebecca points out, it's been a while since the last outbreak, meaning now with the threat of zombies that not even the military can handle, Zombrex profits will be through the fucking roof. Using a phone Chuck stole from one of the scientists that he fucking murdered, Rebecca starts to call her station to help, when she's shot point blank in the head by Sullivan.
What the hell?
What a twist!
Sullivan has been working for Phenotrans the whole time, and if you've been paying attention, you may have already called this, as there are several cutscenes that linger on Sullivan for just long enough to draw suspicion, or how he's been so combative against Chuck going out and trying to solve the case, or the fact that it was pretty fucking obvious. Before Sullivan can kill Chuck and Katie, he's attacked by Stacy and is forced to flee. Chuck follows him to the roof of one of the casinos and confronts him as he straps into his Fulton extraction gear to escape. Sullivan mocked Chuck for his outlook on the outbreak, and that the only way to maintain a consistent supply of Zombrex is Queens. Sullivan views the outbreak as a necessary step to save the lives throughout the country, as some of the country's best are infected, even drawing attention to Katie. He says Fortune City is a small price to pay to keep the country safe, and that it wasn't the first time this has happened either, alluding to the Vegas outbreak, which makes Chuck even more pissed off. Chuck manages to defeat Sullivan after a stupidly difficult fight, but is knocked to the ground after I assume a missile hits him? I don't actually fucking know what happens here. Sullivan takes the opportunity to tell Chuck that he sucks, he's stupid, and that Sullivan and Phenotrans are the good guys and that he fucking loses. Now, a quick lesson in how a Fulton extraction recovery system works. Basically, you strap yourself into a harness where a helium balloon is connected via an exceedingly long line. A plane is meant to fly overhead, notice the line, and snatch the balloon, taking the strapped up person up with it. However, it is paramount that you are not connected to anything on the ground while being extracted. Otherwise, the results are going to be quite grim. So, say somebody straps your harness in at the last minute via a pair of handcuffs onto a pipe, let's just say you're going to be coming back half the man you were. Chuck has finally become victorious, and uses Sullivan's phone to call Channel 6 Action News to report that there are survivors still in the city, with the scoop of a lifetime. Now, a couple of different endings can play out here, just like Dead Rising 1, with ending F being, by far, the saddest fucking ending I have ever seen. Ending F requires you to not give Katie her Zombrex, but be inside the safe room when the military arrives. Chuck is seen clutching Katie's backpack as Stacy tells him that it wasn't his fault, and that they should get going soon. Zombies have then breached the safe room, and Chuck does nothing to fight back, letting them devour him as Stacy watches on in horror. No survivors are found, and the firebomb goes off, with the incident being labeled as the Green Outbreak. Ending D requires you to be outside the safe room when the military arrives. They capture Chuck and lament that they can't just kill him then and there before being overrun by the mutated zombies from the green gas. The city was then firebombed shortly after, once again labeling the incident as the Green Outbreak. Ending C requires you to fail the story before Case 6-3 and still save Katie with Zombrex. As the three try to watch the military roll in, gunshots can be heard throughout the safe room, before Chuck is shot from an off-screen attacker. I wonder who? Oh gee, I wonder who? The Fortune City rescue operation is considered a failure, and the city is firebombed. Ending B occurs if you fail to catch Sullivan during the final case, where the city is firebombed, all traces of life, alive or undead, erased. Ending A requires you to complete all the cases and not give TK Zombrex. The chopper lands on the roof of the safe house, with Stacy carrying Katie to safety. However, Katie has dropped her iconic Puff Puff backpack, which Chuck goes back to get. As he grabs it, however, a zombified TK grabs Chuck and hurls him into the elevator filled with the undead. Chuck throws the backpack to Stacy, asking her to take care of Katie, and as the chopper takes off, we see Chuck holding TK back as he is surrounded by zombies. It's revealed after that Stacy and Katie escape, with Stacy being able to clear Chuck's name, and he is now regarded as a hero. However, it's unclear whether he died or managed to escape. The incident comes to be known as Fortune's End, with Phenotrans share prices continuing to skyrocket. Ending S is when you complete all the cases and give TK Zombrex. Chuck arrives in the helicopter, but Stacy and Katie are nowhere to be found. Going inside, Chuck finds Katie's backpack and slumps himself down in the chair, basically just waiting for the bomb to drop. It's at this moment TK contacts Chuck over the transceiver, telling him that he has both Katie and Stacy held hostage, and if he wants to see them again, he's got to put in some overtime work for TK. It's largely similar to how the original overtime mode from Dead Rising 1 worked. Collect some shit for TK and make your way to the arena where he's holding Stacy and Katie hostage. TK ambushes Chuck and leaves him suspended above a pit of zombies next to Katie and Stacy. TK is having one last hurrah, presenting it all as if it was still an episode of Terror is Reality. As he does this, Chuck manages to climb up the rope to try and save Katie and Stacy, which TK is just not gonna fucking allow that. The final fight with TK takes place above the arena in a similar hand-to-hand fight situation a la Brock Mason. This time, however, you need to manage TK and cranking the lever to pull Katie and Stacy up. It's a nice little bit of added challenge to the fight. After defeating TK, Chuck goes to save the pair, where TK grabs him by the leg and overpowers him, attempting to throw him off the rafters.
You gotta be willing to risk it all if you're ever really gonna win big.
Chuck has his last badass one-liner and saves the pair, having a happy ending where they all walk off holding hands like one big happy family.
From the screen to the ring.
Dead Rising 2's story is pretty good, but I still think the original is better in terms of its story and writing and atmosphere overall. My main gripe with Dead Rising 2 is that it feels far less serious than its predecessor, making itself more akin to an action movie. When I said that Dead Rising 1 was serious yet not devoid of humor, that was largely in part due to the dry and blunt dialogue being unintentionally hilarious. The way characters responded to situations was very human, but in Dead Rising 2, it feels like it's trying to be a funny action movie sometimes. And it doesn't really work because you can tell exactly when it's trying to be funny. Much like this whole fucking channel, if I'm being honest. It continues to critique capitalism and American greed, now focusing more on a big pharma type of conspiracy theory. It furthers the story of the world in a way that aligns pretty well with the whole corporations are evil as fuck and ruining the world for profit narrative, which probably isn't too far off anyway. Sullivan's monologue is actually pretty fucking good because, like I said, you can picture a big pharmaceutical company saying shit like this to convince themselves they're not the bad guys. I think the idea that zombies have become a weapon to perpetuate a global crisis, killing thousands each time in order to keep themselves relevant and further demand for a product they themselves create, is a perfectly dark and morbid idea that really fits this world. Carlito would be so fucking pissed knowing that while his plan worked, it was then spun around for the Americans to once again value profit over human life. This fucking guy can't catch a damn break. Look, I know he did some bad shit, but like, I can't blame him. You wouldn't do the same? You wouldn't fucking do the same? I fucking stand with Carlito. I stand with Carlito Keys. The story still has some of the dark and grim ideas that are in line with the original, but I think some of the decisions made writing-wise hold it back a little bit. The Phenotrans reveal is genuinely great, but some of the other writing choices, like TK in general, kind of diminish it, especially considering Overtime. The whole Overtime ending in of itself is a classic action movie hero ending, where we all walk off into the sunset happily ever after. It's very cliche, but I suppose it's okay, because Overtime isn't the canon ending this time. Ending A is. As you remember, Ending A caps off with Chuck being overwhelmed by a zombified TK in an elevator, and just when it all seems lost, Dead Rising 2 Case West was announced on September 15th, 2010, releasing on December 27th later that year. It serves as an epilogue to the game, giving more background to the outbreaks, how Fortune City and Willamette are linked, and of course, the return of Frank West, now working side by side with Chuck Green to uncover the truth. Just like Case Zero, this was an Xbox Live Arcade exclusive and has never been re-released since. Frank saves Chuck from an untimely demise as Chuck goes on about Phenotrans setting him up and orchestrating the Vegas and Fortune City outbreaks. Frank reveals that he has a source that has informed him of a Phenotrans facility west get it! Of here, and lets Chuck tag along in place of Rebecca, who he was initially going with. Frank, however, lets it be known that if it does come out that Chuck was involved, he's not gonna be happy. Chuck accuses him of just wanting a big scoop, to which Frank says,
"Oh yeah? Is that what you think? There's a hell of a lot more to it than that." And the name's Frank. Frank West.
As they attempt to enter the facility via air vent, ironic, they fall ass first into a pit of zombies needing to fight their way out to safety. They make it to a shipping office where Chuck thinks he's literally in a movie, much to Frank's frustration.
Hey, buddy!
Who the hell are you?
Listen, you just keep quiet, alright? We don't want to hurt. Oh, shit.
Afterwards, they hear over the loudspeaker that zombies have escaped their pens, as Frank and Chuck receive a message from Frank's source. The source released the zombies as a distraction to touch base with Frank. Chuck is skeptical that his source is an employee of Phenotrans, but soldiers on to help them in hopes of getting their evidence to clear his name. They enter some access codes for the source to get access to internal data, but they need time to download it. Chuck grows frustrated at the idea that he won't get the evidence he needs, but the source reassures Chuck that they want to take Phenotrans down just as much as he does. After giving the source some time and exploring the facility, Frank and Chuck head back to the shipping office to contact the source again. The source reveals that the director's office has the evidence to clear Chuck's name, and as Chuck tries to ask who the source really is, they disconnect communications. The pair make their way to the director's office for Chuck's evidence, where they find records of missing persons reports, prisoner lists, and underground schematics for a harvesting lab, Chuck confirming that he saw all of that in Fortune City. Phenotrans has been telling the world that Zombrex is synthetic, not requiring queens to produce anymore. The revelation here is that Phenotrans has been using prisoners, the homeless, and missing people as easy zombification hosts. Clearly, they've run out of these resources and now resort to what Sullivan revealed in Dead Rising 2. Frank gets understandably angry while looking at his dose of Zombrex, throwing it out of frustration, tripping the alarm, and forcing them to escape. Stuck with no way out, Frank uses a walkie-talkie by a fallen guard to hopefully bullshit their way out of the locked room, which somehow works. You can even see Chuck smile slightly, looking away from Frank after he pulls this off. Chuck seems to be warming up to Frank, which is nice to see our two protagonists getting along. They head back to the shipping office to talk with the source, where they reveal that they have the evidence Frank needs, but they're trapped in a secure lab. They can override the lock, but they need time to do so. Now it's a bit of a waiting game for the source to get back to them, so the two have yet another opportunity to explore the facility. While waiting for the source, Chuck is noticeably getting bored and agitated, clicking a pen incessantly. The only unsavable survivor of this DLC. Go on, bud. Never forgotten. Before an argument breaks out, the source contacts Frank, telling him that they've got the evidence, but they can't open the doors. Chuck has the brilliant idea to cut the power, which the source informs them of some C4 they can use to take out the generator in the power room. Finding the bombs and the detonator, the two plant the C4, run like hell, and narrowly miss the explosion. Okay, fuck yeah, you know? Fuck yeah! You know, fuck yeah! Now that the power's out and the doors are open, they make a break for the secure lab, where Frank and Chuck finally meet with the source, Isabella Keyes. God. The two are shocked, Isabella revealing that she had no choice but to work for Phenotrans, otherwise she would have gone to jail. Frank accuses her of helping them, knowing queens were necessary for production, to which she states that she's tried to make it synthetic, but Phenotrans stole her work, preventing her from achieving her life's purpose, development of a cure. She tells Frank that she must escape to finish her research before they're cut short by director of Phenotrans, Marion Mallon, sending in guards to capture them. Isabella manages to escape, to which Chuck is very displeased. However, she comes back to kill the guards holding Frank and Chuck hostage before being met with this fucking unit! Isabella tries to throw her USB stick full of research to the pair before being captured and returned to Marion. The unit, Harjit Singh, crushes the USB, and Frank and Chuck are forced to fight as the only psychopath in the game. Somehow the two middle-aged men triumph over this fucking beast, and Harjit stumbles into a container of queens and has my least favorite death in the series because it makes me very uncomfortable and I don't like it. Now able to confront Marion, Frank states that she looks like she can use some Zombrex every day, commenting on her bite mark on her cheek. She laughs, stating that she doesn't need Zombrex. She's already had a cure for zombification years ago using Isabella's research. Chuck is pissed at this revelation, as Marion states that it wouldn't be in the interest of Phenotrans to release it, and that humanity isn't worthy of a cure for the very thing that humanity brought upon itself. Greed and apathy brought zombies into being, and humanity deserves zombies for what they've done. She then activates the self-destruct sequence, and as Chuck demands they stay to try and find the cure that she was talking about, Frank tells them that it's too late and they need to escape.
Now!
Evacuate now.
Outside the facility, Chuck is dejected, still thinking about a cure and how it would have changed the world. Frank makes the astute comment that she very well may have been lying, to which Chuck responds that he needs to believe that a cure is out there, for Katie. At the very least, they got the evidence that Phenotrans was behind Fortune City, and as Frank's watch goes off for his Zombrex, he realizes that he left it in the director's office.
Take it. The world needs Frank West.
Case West is a nice little epilogue to Dead Rising 2, and I think it was a damn shame that it was exclusive to the 360. Gameplay wise, it's a bit of a downgrade from Dead Rising 2, but the story is pretty neat, and seeing Frank and Chuck work together is pretty cool as well. It creates a perfect setup for future Dead Rising games as well, as Phenotrans is still at large, as well as the idea of a cure being out there, or at the very least in progress of being developed. I really like the dynamic that Frank and Chuck have here, especially considering that Frank is written pretty similarly to how he was presented in Dead Rising 1. It would have been very easy to make him a bit more like Chuck, but he takes the situation very seriously at all corners of the adventure. While Chuck wants to be an action movie hero, Frank knows his way around a bit more and is a lot more calm than Chuck in these situations. The setting itself isn't all that interesting, but I guess if we're exploring a scientific laboratory, it's gonna look very clean and sterile and similar from location to location, and especially considering what we just fucking came off of, I don't even think that's really fair. The big ass fucking square. Fucking square, like fuck! The entire story of Dead Rising 2 is pretty good. Case Zero and Case West included. There are a couple of questionable decisions that bring it down a little bit for me, but overall it does pretty well to try and recapture some of the elements and essence that made Dead Rising 1's story so good in the first place, while trying to do something different as well. I feel like the setting itself doesn't really allow the game to lean into the more horror elements that the original had, and it feels way more focused on gritty action than survival, but it still tries to put forth a story that fits within the world and is a natural progression of the franchise. I can also appreciate that we have a totally new protagonist to work with this time around, which we can finally fucking talk about. Jeez, 6,500 fucking words on the story. Fucking shut up, cunt. No one cares. As I've said the entire time, Dead Rising 2 feels more like an action movie, and Chuck Green is a classic action movie hero. He's in his late 20s, he's handsome, he's strong, he's a handyman, he's a great dad, and he stands out with his bright Homer Simpson yellow motocross jacket. During development, it's said that Inafune wanted to create a character that was more interesting than Frank West, and the idea was to give him someone that depended on him, as well as make that protagonist more integral to the story. I don't necessarily agree with the notion that Frank wasn't all that interesting. I think his journey from selfish journalist to savior willing to risk his life to get the story of Santa Cabeza out is quite compelling. But I do agree that making Chuck more integral to the story instead of just happenstance made the stakes a bit higher, as well as gave Chuck some added extrinsic motivation to match his intrinsic motivation, which is his daughter Katie. My favorite parts of Dead Rising 2 are when we have scenes between Chuck and Katie, and it just shows off how strong their relationship is. Chuck will genuinely do anything for his daughter, risking his life multiple times just to make sure she has enough Zombrex to stay alive. After seeing his wife turn undead and bite her, Katie is all Chuck has left, so of course he's not gonna let anything get in the way of that. Case Zero does a great job of warming us up to Chuck and Katie, showing that the Green family is not a weak one, expanded upon further in the full game. There are a lot of nice moments between the two, like when she has her first dose and we see how proud she is of herself for taking it well, or how protective Chuck is of her, immediately telling Rebecca not to record her without even looking. Much like how Frank was a photographer and had a mechanic based around that trait, Chuck is a former 2-time motocross champion, naturally lending himself to be a great mechanic, tying into the game's combo weapon system. He's able to create makeshift deadly weapons out of unassuming items, which can lead to a nasty arsenal. I think it's very cute how they've done this, and it makes sense for him to be able to make combo weapons, and also ups the ante within the game. However, my main critique of Chuck, and you've probably already guessed it, he's just too fucking cool. He rides a motorbike onto TK's escaping train, he goes to attach a tow hook onto his helicopter, can literally make a fucking lightsaber, always has a zany one-liner.
I saw what you did there.
Like I've said, he's an action movie hero. Maybe this is a result of Chuck being more interesting, but it comes off as a bit too silly compared to the tone of the original. Though, his background does naturally lend him to be a bit more of a risk taker, and this is even said in the 2011 comic Road to Fortune, so I guess it's not totally out of the question. Peter Fleming takes up the role of Chuck, and does a really good job. He really fits the Mr. Cool Guy voice they were likely going for, but he does a pretty good job, and it really shines through whenever there's a scene with Katie, where that exhausted but still supportive dad voice really comes through. I especially like his anger towards Sullivan at the end. You can really feel that bubbling over sense of anger that he has at this point in the game. The new supporting cast is also pretty good, but not without some issues. A lot of people didn't or still don't like Katie, but I do. You know, what can I say? I'm a sucker for this shit, man, you know? There's really not much to say about Katie, except that she is an exceptionally brave 7-year-old. She's a good kid who knows the world is a bit fucked, but if she has her dad, she knows she's in good hands. She stays in the security room for the entire game, but what else can you expect? She's literally fucking 7? The father-daughter relationship between her and Chuck is very sweet to see, and it always warms my little gamer heart to see the interactions between these two. Stacy really isn't all that interesting. At least in comparison to some of the other characters that we have. She's basically the Otis of the game. She stays in the security room the entire time and tells Chuck when she sees survivors on the cameras and takes care of Katie when Chuck isn't there. She isn't all that fleshed out, but has some moments where we actually do learn a bit more about her. Namely when she talks about her sister who gave up on taking Zombrex because it was affecting her too much. It gives us a bit more insight as to why Stacy joined Cure, and I wish there was more of her, Chuck and Katie interacting together to flesh everything out a bit more. There's a cute moment where Katie looks at Stacy and then Katie looks at Chuck and they both smile, which is like pretty much the only hint you get that these two will get together at the end. I just wish there was more for Stacy in the game, but it feels like they gave most of that to Rebecca. Rebecca has a ton of personality, and the game is not gonna let you forget that. Like genuinely, like every single fucking time she's on screen, it's a shot like this. She's a reporter who speaks mainly in sexual innuendos, but is also quite capable by herself. She's initially covering the controversy of terror is reality, but when the outbreak hits, she sees it as a chance to get her hands on the scoop of a lifetime. She's brave almost to her detriment, but you can't help but admire it. A lot of fans love her mainly because she's just more interesting than Stacy, likely because you interact with her in more meaningful ways that aren't just her telling you that you need to save someone or whatever. I can't lie, I do like Rebecca a lot, and she's a fun character who's very confident in herself, but I feel like the way she was written contributes a lot to why Dead Rising 2 isn't taken as seriously as its predecessor. In a review on the now defunct Gamasutra, I don't fucking know, Tom McShay writes, "The cast of characters, including a volatile security officer and a sultry news reporter, have an over-the-top acting style that makes it enjoyable to see what ridiculous thing will spew from their mouths next. It's a tongue-in-cheek approach that never takes itself too seriously. And at risk of sounding like a pompous fuckhead, this is my biggest problem with Rebecca, Sullivan, and TK. They make the game far too silly. Yes, it's a fucking video game, I get it. But the reason I love Dead Rising 1's characters so much is because they had grounded and realistic reactions to the events unfolding. The reason why Stacy is considered so boring is because she's the most Dead Rising 1 character writing wise, while everyone else is a bit sillier. But like I said, Rebecca is fun, and it does suck that she died at the end, but someone had to. Sullivan is another example as he's comedically antagonistic towards Chuck, which makes his reveal at the end not really that surprising, as almost every cutscene is in, the camera lingers on him for far too long. However, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Sullivan being so antagonistic can be chalked up to him just being an overly protective security guard and being old and grumpy as fuck. He gets a bit more interesting once the Phenotrans reveal happens, and he has a great speech about the motives of Phenotrans, but then he gets bisected. Rest in peace. Literally. He doesn't get enough screen time as the actual villain. It's the same thing with Marion from Case West. She just kinda shows up at the end to be an evil bitch and then fucks off. Granted, she also makes the revelation that a cure is out there, which keeps things interesting, but both Sullivan and Marion aren't as memorable as TK, who isn't just eating the scenery, he's making a 20-course meal out of every single fucking second he's on screen. TK is an extremely charismatic villain, however, he really isn't the best villain for a Dead Rising game, and immediately set the tone that the game is far sillier than its predecessor within the first 5 minutes. Look, I know it's probably really fucking annoying to hear me keep prattling on about it, but imagine loving Dead Rising 1 for its tone, and writing, and atmosphere, and then you get Dead Rising 2 and it fucking starts like this.
You gotta be willing to risk it all, if you're ever really gonna...
TK is memorable because he's funny and he has charisma dripping off of his fingertips, but as what I would consider a Dead Rising villain, he doesn't even come close. Carlito was a great villain because to a point, you could sympathize with him. He had his entire village destroyed for research and caused Willamette as retaliation. He genuinely only wanted to live in peace with his sister, but felt revenge was necessary for what was done to him. Sullivan was a pawn by Phenotrans, convinced that they were doing the right thing, and had a motive that, in a way, you could understand. If queens are the only way to create Zombrex, how else are we realistically going to get them? It's not right, but it makes sense. Marion genuinely doesn't have enough screen time, but she comes off very similar to TK, but is given a bit more in Dead Rising 3, so we'll save that discussion for then. TK, in comparison, is just an asshole who wants more money and doesn't care how he gets it, and takes every chance he can to rub how superior he feels in Chuck's face. He's a one-dimensional character, but his personality is what makes people say he's a great villain. I think the main issue is that the writers attributed silliness to the characters and the setting rather than just the setting itself. There's an imbalance of silly to serious, and that's why Dead Rising 1 worked so well. The two elements balanced each other out, but in trying to up the ante, Dead Rising 2 had too many silly elements and too many tongue-in-cheek aspects, for me at least. We also can't ignore the return of Frank West, and as I said earlier, the way he was presented in Case West feels very familiar to how he was presented and written in the original. Sure, he leans a little more into the silly side of things, but for the most part, he's still a very serious and driven character. They did pretty well with Frank here. I hope if he returns, they keep it up just like this. Characters, for me at least, are a bit of a step down from the original, leaning more into the absurd side of things when what made them so good in the first place was how seriously they were presented. And characters that didn't lean into this absurdity were viewed as boring because they didn't have enough to do comparatively. It still works, but I guess the characters needed to be a little bit sillier to align with the new gameplay as well. I'll be assuming you're at least familiar with Dead Rising's gameplay, or at the very least have watched my video on the original. Watch it now! I won't be going into depth on every gameplay element, just what may have been changed from the original to the new one. There's no need to go on another 10-minute long rant about how much I love the timer, but don't tempt me, cause I fucking will. Dead Rising 2's most notable addition that changed the franchise permanently going forward was combo weapons. If you remember, Dead Rising 1 had the mantra of use anything and everything as a weapon, a slogan that already naturally led players to want to explore and experiment with new ways to kill zombies with things they find around the mall. But with the sequel, there needed to be more than that. So how do you expand upon a pretty broad definition already? Just fucking tape shit together, of course. Baseball bat and nails? Yup. Boxing gloves and knives? Yup. Sledgehammer and a fire axe? Yup. Push brew and a machete? I mean, why not? Bingo ball and a fucking car battery? I mean, I guess. Wheelchair and electric battery? Pfft, fucking whatever. Paddle and a chainsaw? Iconic. Flashlight and gems? Is that a fucking lightsaber? Lead pipe and fireworks? Fuck it, why not? The addition of combo weapons gives players more to do and more to experiment with, which is already a major plus. Even if some of these weapons are genuinely fucking absurd, they're still fun to play with and add to your arsenal. You'll get these combo cards which tell you which items to combine, but you can still experiment yourself and maybe even figure something new out. You're only able to make combo weapons at maintenance rooms located throughout Fortune City, and within these rooms are usually items you can use to make a combo weapon, so it's always worth going into every room you can to see what might be within. It added a whole new layer of complexity to the game by giving players an incentive to pick up items they may not use normally and create totally new ways to play the game that the player had total agency over. Of course, there are some weapons that are just better than others, some because they're far too effective, others because they're common and easy to make. Combo weapons also grant PP when killing zombies, so you even have more of an incentive to make them. PP gain varies from weapon to weapon, but you can rack up points pretty fast. As I mentioned earlier, combo cards exist to remind you of which weapons to make what, but they also serve two other purposes. If you make a combo weapon but don't have the combo card for it, you'll get a scratch card instead, which halves how much PP you would gain from using that weapon. Scratch cards also don't allow you to use the secondary attack of a weapon if it has one. So if you're using the Defiler before you have the combo card, you can only swing it normally and gain 125 PP per kill. But with it, you gain 250 PP and access to a spinning attack that grants 350 PP and clears out hordes pretty well. There are 50 combo cards in total, 34 of them obtainable through leveling, 4 of them through saving survivors, 2 through defeating psychopaths, and 8 located throughout the city, and 1 given to you when you first start crafting, with 1 secret combo weapon which you'll likely look up online to find. Even the fucking achievement calls you out for this. How the fuck was I meant to figure it out, huh? It's fucking Nectar and a queen. Who the fuck is gonna do that? I wish there were more to find out in the world instead of 70% of them being through leveling up, but hey, what can you do? At least finding combo weapons out in the world naturally was an addition in later entries that I actually quite liked, so that's a plus. Of course you got your classics, your laser sword, knife gloves, defiler, paddle saw. You got them all. These are some of the favorites among the players. These rank so high not only because they're really fucking good at killing zombies, but because they're pretty easy and common to make as well. Save for the paddle saw. That just gets up there because that's fucking cool. Like, fucking look at this shit. You're telling me that's not the coolest fucking thing you've seen all year? An interesting thing I found out about combo weapons and doing research for this video was that a couple of these were actually made for real. In Terror is Reality, the making of Dead Rising 2, they show off that, yes, they did make a real paddle saw, pole weapon, and defiler. They said they would just take iconic weapons and add on to it. You know, how do we take it one step further? I think that's when Dead Rising 2's combo weapons really shine. They're not too far out of the realm of possibility. While the paddle saw is a little bit of a stretch, seeing someone actually make it has me go like, well shit, someone could do it. And that someone is me. I can make these. I'm gonna make the defiler. Now, I've immediately run into a problem. I have like the image of the defiler like seared into my fucking mind, right? But I only seared it into my mind after I bought everything. You may have already noticed the problem. These axes are way too fucking long. Found that in my dad's shed. Why don't we just mark it with the hacksaw? What a fucking genius idea. What a fucking genius you are. Now, these were only $23, so don't... If there's any, like, fire axe enthusiasts out there being like, oh, you destroyed the fucking fire axe economy, suck it. I feel like I actually am in my own little fucking maintenance room now. You see, that guy's going fucking crazy. Oh, I think that's cutting. Oh, that is cutting! There's an odd smell in my room now. Yeah, that is cutting. There's a very... There's a very pungent smell in my room now. I think that's just the plastic. I hope. You know what they say in tradie school? Measure never, cut once. You know? I've got to be careful of my beers. Okay, it's almost there. It's almost there. There's a very prominent smell in here now. There we go. There we go. There we go. Get that fucking thing out of here. That's perfect. That is perfect. There's a lot of fucking green shit. Come on. Oh, that is not working. There's just beer all over the fucking table now. There we go. There we go. Guys, you don't need a fucking bottle opener anymore. You just get a fucking axe from your local hardware store. This will be alright. Whoa. Ah! What the fuck is he doing? Alright, sure I can just break that, right? There we go! I hope that's not like... I hope that's not toxic to breathe in. Life goes on. Like I said, I've got an image of it seared into my mind. So I kind of know like what we're doing. I also have not a fucking clue what's going on. I don't know what the fuck is going on over here. The smell that is coming off of these axes. Ooh! Yeah, that is that's a stench and a half, man. Ample room to hold. Now we just got a tape. Ooh. Just this beer fucking everywhere. Don't do this. Don't fucking do this at home. No one should ever do this at home. Except for me. Okay, this is like surprisingly easy. I see why Chuck made it. I am shocked how easy that is. Like, it's not like an overly complex thing, but I'm shocked at how fucking easy that is. Yeah, it is a bit more difficult. Once I get... The beer is seeping through the table. It's gonna get on my green screen! Oh, my fucking beer screen! I think that's it! I genuinely think that might be it. Dude, hang on. If the cops see this, will they come to my house? I've just made like a fucked up, like, contraption. That is heavy, man! Good lord, that is heavy. How the Dude, you're telling me Chuck Green is swinging this shit around like a fucking baseball bat? That is heavy, dog! I'm probably adding like a kilo of fucking gaffer tape onto it too, but... There's a lot of beer on the floor! There it is! was so easy! What the fuck? I made a real ass defiler, dude! What? Come on! I need my beer! I'm like actually shocked at how easy that was. This is, dude, if you saw someone with this, I would run. That is insane. If I get one negative comment on my fucking video, I get one fat comment, I get one hate comment, you know what I've got. You know what I fucking got now, huh? That is wild. Subscribe. Fucking hell. 25, by the way. Look at this fucking thing. Ooh. Combo weapons don't stop there though. Early on, you can get access to combo vehicles too, but they're pretty limited. Taking certain items to this motorcycle in the combo bay will allow you to combine them to make a motorcycle more powerful, such as mounted machine guns, a bazooka bike, a wheelchair so you can carry a survivor, or the one most people will do, the slicycle, which it's just too much damn fucking fun, man. Like, come on. Combo weapons are a great addition to the series, and they just make a lot of sense. It's a very natural progression too. If a sledgehammer and a fire axe are effective apart, they can only be more effective together, right? There are a couple weapons that are just a little too fantastical for me, and others that are just flat out fucking useless, but overall, they were a fantastic addition to the game that helped elevate it that one step further. Another mechanic that Dead Rising 2 added was the much requested co-op feature. Co-op allows you and a friend to play through the game start to finish, completing missions, saving survivors, defeating psychopaths, and so on. There can be a lot of fun playing through with a friend, and there's no better feeling than beating the absolute fucking shit out of a psychopath with your buddy. In co-op, you'll also no longer die immediately when you lose all your health. You'll go down instead, and your teammate will need to revive you with a food item. Aside from this, it's pretty much the same as normal. And yes, there's friendly fire. Good fucking luck making it out of the starting area. I know I didn't get out of that shit for like half an hour. Dead Rising 2 also added parental responsibility via Katie. As I said earlier, Katie is infected and needs her daily dose of Zombrex to prevent her from turning. She'll need it every morning between 7 and 8 AM, and the game will remind you of this prior with enough time to make it back to the safe room. You need at least 4 doses of Zombrex to make it to the end of the main story, and if you fail to give Katie her dose even once, the main story is closed off until next playthrough or you save, reload, or restart. Zombrex can be found out in the world or as a reward for completing certain side missions, so it's not like it's impossible to come by. I remember there being a lot of discussion on this as it forced you to drop everything and go back to the safe house to give Katie her dose, when in reality it really wasn't that fucking bad, guys. The Zombrex doses start at 7 AM every day, with each major case in the game ending at least 2 hours prior to that, with enough time to get back to the safe room and administer Katie her dose. Then the next main case of the game will start soon after that in the safe room. It's really not that fucking bad, guys. Especially considering how much more lenient the timer is now, it's more than likely just gamers having piss poor time management and blaming the fictional child as a way of shifting blame. But then again, I'm a different kind of person who takes every opportunity to stress himself out because he loves the feeling of achievement of overcoming that stress. Or maybe I do it to avoid thinking about the crushing reality of being alive and being stuck in the corporate machine, lusting for the day that my creative output can sustain me. But that is a story for another day. Please like and subscribe. As this is a Dead Rising game, it's also open world and much bigger than before, with more to do. While there's the classic exploration benefits of finding food, weapons, new clothing, magazines, and now gifts for Katie, there's also a lot of minigames littered throughout Fortune City as well to keep you entertained. It is an amusement park and entertainment resort after all. You can ride the bull, catch money, run around and this fucking thing, ride the shark, gamble, peep show, gamble, literally burn your money away, golf, then more gambling. Quite genuinely, the perfect game for me, especially considering I had to uninstall Counter-Strike because I had no self-control. While the gains aren't real, this will do for now. Speaking of gambling, cash is king in Fortune City, and it's no different during a zombie outbreak. Money is a new system in Dead Rising 2 where Chuck can collect money through various means to exchange for goods and services. Picking it off the ground, smashing slot machines wide open, stealing the money from ATMs, and gambling. If you've ever played this game, you are all too fucking familiar with the Slot Ranch Casino and this machine in particular. Cash is commonly used at the several pawn shops located throughout Fortune City where you can buy several items, such as weapons, combo weapons, and vehicle keys. Vehicle keys are what you're gonna want the most, as they give you access to various vehicles located in the city. The vehicles can be extremely useful, either to transport survivors or make a mad dash to the mission before the time runs out. There are 3 vehicles to purchase: the chopper, the sports car, and the SUV. They each cost an exorbitant amount of money, so better get gambling, buddy. There are also some missions that require you to either pay survivors money so that they come with you, yes, fucking really, or participate in some of the mini games around the map. However, I really don't see any reason for the money system aside from locking these vehicles behind a $3.5 million paywall. I get that it would be pretty weird for a video game taking place in what essentially is Las Vegas to not have a money system, but the game doesn't really give you much of an incentive to use it. Buying combo weapons from pawn shops kind of feels like it defeats the purpose of them entirely. You know, maybe you need to buy them when you're in a pinch, but if you're playing smart, you're likely never going to have to do this. The SUV is the only vehicle worth purchasing, as others have a very limited area they can drive around in, whereas the SUV has all of this. The only other thing you can purchase at these stores is Zombrex, but as I said, there's more than enough Zombrex to find out in the game world, so while it's nice to have the option, there's not a lot of use for money aside from that. However, if you do find yourself perusing the wares of this trustworthy gentleman, make sure you brush up on your bargaining skills and pick up a couple magazines beforehand to get a better price. Yes, magazines do make a return from the original, but don't start thinking we can make a laser sword and grab 3 magazines to make it last until overtime mode. No sir. While they're still pretty good, there isn't a single magazine that increases combo weapon durability. They only work for base weapons. So while they can buff the durability, you're probably not going to use them all that much, considering combo weapons are just more worth using. There are other magazines such as 25% PP boost when defeating zombies, which is now more useful with the addition of combo weapons, drink alcohol without getting sick, vehicles have 3 times the durability, and so on. However, the magazines you're probably going to use the most are bargaining and gambling magazines, which reduce the prices at pawn shops and increase your odds to win while gambling respectively. Food is just as important here as it was in Dead Rising 1, and while you're still probably going to resort to hoarding jugs of orange juice, making mixed drinks is still as effective as ever, especially given we have some new mixed drinks to make this time around. While we have the original set consisting of Randomizer, Zombate, Spitfire, Energizer, Nectar, Quickstep, and Untouchable, we now have Repulse and Painkiller. If you don't already know, very quickly, and I really mean that this time, let's refresh. Randomizer, as the name implies, will give you a random drink effect, however it is far more likely to give you jack fucking shit and leave you vomiting all over Fortune City. Zombate isn't all that much better as it makes zombies more attracted to Chuck, which is even less useful now considering its main use was distracting zombies from escorted survivors, and when every survivor is the equivalent of the fucking Juggernaut, what's the point? We'll get to it later. Spitfire got the biggest change from 1 to 2, where before it made Frank spit like a pistol, now the name is a bit more accurate, as drinking it will make Chuck do his best impression of the Carter 3 and spit actual literal fire. Energizer is the same before, it will make Chuck invincible for 10 seconds, so make sure to pick up this magazine and make it last for 20. Nectar is again the same as before, drinking it spawns a queen and makes queens spawn more frequently. Quickstep makes you run fast, and Untouchable makes it so zombies can't grab you. Done. The 2 new ones are pretty cool. Painkiller is pretty self-explanatory. Chuck will take half the damage he normally would for 1 minute, which is really helpful in these psychopath fights. Repulse is the opposite of Zombie. Zombies will not attack Chuck for 1 minute. It is basically untouchable, but better. The main upgrade that mixed drinks got was that the crafting recipes were greatly expanded. Like, look how many fucking recipes there are for Energizer now. Like, do you remember when this shit was just cabbage? This comes from there being a lot more food items now. You got hamburgers, you got fries, you got jelly beans, you got hot dogs, you got chili, you got tacos, burritos,
Coffee, Cheetos, chicken.
You got it all. It's nice that making these drinks has become a little less of a hassle, and they're still very much worth making. If I had to slot these two new ones in on the list, I'd say Painkiller is just below Quickstep, and Repulse is the best drink in the game. The leveling system is largely the same from the original: kill zombies, gain PP, level up your stats, and get new skills. The only thing is that Chuck's skills aren't nearly as interesting as Frank's were, but when you have flash kicks, disembowels, and lariats, it's kind of really fucking hard to compete. I will admit though, I do quite like the hands-off skill, but I'll be honest, Frank's kit is just far more entertaining. I'll give him credit though, these skills are way easier to pull off than some of the shit Frank had to do. The timer makes a return in this one, and it's a lot more lenient this time around. In the original, I often found myself on the bones of my ass dashing from mission to mission, but here, that's rarely, if ever, been a problem. Still, it's great that it made a return, as the timer is a core part of Dead Rising's identity. Side missions make a return from last time, with still following the same 3 types of side missions that we have from the previous game that Stacy will give us over the transceiver. The transceiver itself also got a bit of an upgrade, as now you only have to answer story relevant transceiver calls, with the rest of them going to text message that you can view later on. It's a great change that a lot of players really appreciated. Classic escort missions return with Chuck getting a call letting him know that there's someone that needs help, and that he has to escort that person back to the security room for a PP bonus. Now, if you remember, the AI in Dead Rising 1 was a massive point of frustration for a lot of people, because it was fucking infuriating due to the fact that there were quirks to the system that the game never told you about. Things like different survivor personality types and paired survivors, which makes sense once you hear about it, but like I said, it's never explained in game and you're likely never going to figure it out on your own. As well as that, survivors in Dead Rising 1 were the equivalent of fucking glass. They took way too much damage way too quickly, and if you let them escape your view for 2 fucking seconds, their health would deplete like crazy. Dead Rising 2 changed this, however, by making survivors damn near invincible and giving them 2 additional brain cells up from 0. Survivors are far easier to escort in Dead Rising 2, with them having much more health than they did previously and being more adept in combat regardless of their physicality. You still have some injured survivors that you need to carry or lean on to get them going, but thankfully the magazine that nullifies this problem is available pretty much from the get-go and not at the end of the fucking game. Survivors pretty much bulldoze their way through zombies now, so you rarely have to check up on them and can just make a beeline for wherever you need to go and they'll follow pretty easily. So now there's really no risk to letting them out of your sight. They can also give you rewards for saving them. Some give you money, others give you combo cards, and rarely Zombrex, which makes saving these people much more worth it. However, even though it's convenient and a lot easier, I don't necessarily think that it's better. In learning about how survivors had different quirks to the AI in Dead Rising 1, having it so dumbed down in the sequel feels weird almost. Like I said, if they just explained that to you in any capacity, frustration around these quirks would be avoided and would have opened up new opportunities for distinct survivor personalities that add an extra layer of depth to the gameplay. While in the original it was frustrating but a test of your knowledge and ability as a player, here there's no fucking challenge at all. And all survivors are pretty much the same, save for those who need to be carried and so on. In making them so simple, it lost a part of its identity with it as well. I'm glad that they're a bit more adept and able to actually defend themselves, but I think making them this easy was a step in the wrong direction. Survivors are only near invincible though, and can still die and defect from you. The survivor death cutscenes return once again, but you'll probably never know that they have, because I'm almost certain they're bugged and don't work the way they're supposed to. In the original, if a survivor took too much damage from a zombie and died, a small cutscene would play showing their death in gruesome detail. It reinforced the idea that these were real people you failed to save, not just in-game objectives. In 2, they do come back, however, they can only happen in this specific area of Royal Flush Plaza, and even then, as survivors are so tanky, the odds on this happening are slim to fucking none. For the longest time, I genuinely thought it just didn't exist in the game, And it sucks that they only occur under these circumstances because they added a lot of atmosphere and tone to the game, which Dead Rising 2 is lacking in. But hey, at least you actually have something to fucking escort, unlike in Case West where you just fulfill a request for them and then they're marked as saved and they piss off. But as it's a much shorter experience, I can kind of excuse it. It would be fucking awful if that carried over into the main games. Similar to last time, there were also some survivors you need to fulfill a request for before they come and follow you. There's this guy who wants $25,000, this guy you gotta follow as he steals money from all the ATMs, these 3 women who want you to carry their shopping for you and you have to carry it all the way to the safe room. If you drop it, they actually start attacking you. God, some guys just have all the luck, don't they? This lady wants you to get naked so she can feel less embarrassed about being naked herself. Europa, there are kind of like a million other things to be worried about right now, but you know, whatever helps you out, girl. One survivor in particular has been bitten and requires Zombrex before you can save him, only to later on need a second dose. This is a really cool idea as it forces the player to think about whether or not saving him is actually worth it. You do have a daughter to save after all. It's surprising for players as they likely haven't thought of other characters needing Zombrex, as by this point in the game when this mission shows up, Katie is the only person we've ever seen needs Zombrex. Unless you played Case Zero. The same thing was in Case Zero. Yeah, that kind of ruined my point, but you get what I mean. Mutinies, or mutiny, singular, does return, but there's only one and it's exactly the same as before. One survivor is getting a bit antsy and is about to convince others to leave with them to try and escape. Chuck has to talk to them until they change their mind and avert the mutiny. Nice to have at least. Requests also make a comeback, with certain survivors requesting you fetch them items from out in the mall, which is easy enough and a nice bit of padding for the game as well. And of course, we have our psychopath missions, which are the highlight of the game for most people. People who have either gone insane as a result of the outbreak, or are just genuinely bad people taking advantage of the situation to further their own sick, twisted desires. This time around we have around 17 to talk about, and it took me 45 fucking minutes last time to talk about 14, so we better get a move on. Your first psychopath that you can fight is actually an unmarked fight, meaning the game doesn't tell you about it, letting you hopefully stumble upon it accidentally. If you try to cut through the Yucatan Casino on the first day, you'll be knocked out and met with a big unit, Ted, and his friend Snowflake. You might ask, what kind of a fucking name is Snowflake? Tiger? Why not? Ted has taken you captive in hopes of feeding you to Snowflake, as zombie meat isn't good enough for this precious little sweet murder machine. Chuck attempts to defuse the situation, asking Ted if we can just talk about it. Nice and slow. However, this enrages Ted, thinking that Chuck is making fun of him, prompting him to command Snowflake to attack. Ted fucking sucks. There's no other way to put it, because it's technically because Ted isn't even the psychopath fight here. Snowflake is. Ted is basically just a defected survivor. After you defeat him, Ted can be seen crawling on the ground, deciding he doesn't feel so good, and understanding that he's going to die. He offers himself up to Snowflake as fresh meat, calling out for her as he dies. Snowflake is the real fight here and will give you some trouble. Her most common attack is pouncing on you, forcing you into a QTE before running away again. If you're really considering fighting her, I'd say just don't. It's not even worth the hassle of trying to fight this fucking thing. However, Snowflake can be tamed. If you've noticed around the area, there are stakes which Chuck can use to tame the beast and make her a survivor. You'll need to get her to eat 3 steaks to tame her, which can be a bit buggy sometimes, as it's not uncommon to drop the steak and see her run right past it and take a bite out of your leg instead. After taming her, a short cutscene plays out, after which Snowflake will follow Chuck to the security room. Snowflake also counts as a gift for Katie. Not many other kids can say that the dad fought tooth and nail through hordes of zombies and a psychopath to get them a pet tiger. You can also save a survivor named Lenny who will turn on all the slot machines in the casino for Chuck to use. He's found in the manager's room of the casino, and despite playing this game several times over, I had no idea the survivor existed until 1 month ago. Snowflake's fight theme is Narrow Escape by Cell Dweller, and get used to that name because you're going to be hearing a fucking lot of it going forward. It's pretty simple, but I still quite enjoy it. This fight, while pretty cool and very surprising to run into, isn't really a great fight for first time players. It can be very frustrating as they may think their only option is to fight Snowflake, who plays keep away a lot and does a lot of damage for the level you're likely going to be. Not to mention, any survivors you may have picked up on the way are at high risk of death unless you lock them in a nearby room. As well as that, players seem to have differing experiences in taming this beast, as I have never really had any trouble taming Snowflake, while others cite it as a frustrating experience on par with explaining Street Fighter to a Tekken head. But it's unique to say the least, we can give him that. The next psychopath is Leon Bell, a fellow contestant of Terror is Reality, who thought of Chuck as an idol, but now thinks he's soft and weak, even making fun of Chuck's deceased wife at the beginning of the game, citing that it was all his fault. Man, like fuck this guy, like already! Leon is found outside the front of the arena and confronts Chuck, citing that softness he feels that he has. A survivor attempts to get their attention as they talk, which Leon mercilessly slices down, citing double points for humans, still thinking he's in the game show. He tosses a key to Chuck to a nearby motorbike and challenges him to a fight. Now, we're only on the second psychopath and we're already repeating ourselves, but this fight, while cool, is really rough the first time around. The fight starts with Leon driving away from you, forcing you to hop on the bike and chase him down to Fortune Park, where the proper fight takes place. Most of the fight will be spent trying to bait Leon to ram you with his bike and have him drive into a wall to get a chance to land some hits in. You may remember that a lot of vehicle-based fights in Dead Rising 1 had a frustrating aspect to them, as every time you came within 4 galaxies of the vehicle, it would send you into a tumble animation. This occurs once again with Leon, but thankfully it's not nearly as bad as Steven or Isabella. Yet, since Leon is rocking the Slicycle, it can be really frustrating to get some hits in as the chainsaws seem to take so much priority over you. You'll find yourself in the middle of an attack, but since the zipper of Chuck's jacket has come within 40 fucking meters of it, it will interrupt you. Thankfully, however, Leon is not nearly as unrealistically fast as Isabella and seems to follow some form of logic, so it makes it a little more approachable. Once you manage to defeat Leon, he's seen riding away before the gas tank springs a leak heading back to his trailer. However, Leon cannot help himself and starts taunting Chuck by doing a burnout on his bike, so low that the chainsaws make contact with the gas, spark, and ignite Leon. He still cannot help himself, and in his dying breath, states,
But never forget, chump, I'm number one!
Yeah, you're on fire.
Defeating Leon gives you access to the combo bay where you're able to create combo vehicles as we talked about earlier. So the reward is 2 bikes at the either end of Fortune City, making it easier to get around and the ability to customize them very early on. Neat! Leon's fight theme is Terror is Reality from the game's original soundtrack, which, god damn, this shit is fucking exquisite. This shit is great. I love Leon's fight theme. It's loud and it's boisterous, just like him. It's fucking fantastic.
I understood that reference.
I think it's somewhat cruel to put basically Isabella 2.0 as one of the first psychopath fights in the game, but you gotta start him young, I'd say. Leon is fine, there's nothing really egregiously bad about him, it's just a little annoying and rough the first time around. It's not the greatest, but at least it's not integral to the story like Steven or Isabella was. If you played Dead Rising 1, this is nothing new and nothing you can't handle. Brandon Whitaker is up next, a member of Cure that's just totally fucking lost it. Located in the bathrooms of the Americana Casino, he's seen muttering about the growing movement and the change that's to come. He thinks Chuck Green started the movement of letting zombies free to end the oppression against them, and that having zombies kill and eat the living to make us all equal as zombies is a beautiful and radical plan. He attempts to let a zombie kill an innocent woman before Chuck stops him and pushes the zombie back into the stall, which enrages Brandon, thinking Chuck is getting cold feet on his plan that he didn't even start, don't forget that. Brandon is a really good fight, I like it a lot. It can be a little frustrating, but it's fair. Brandon can do a lot of damage with a shard of glass, so it's important to be wary of him up close and make sure you come into this fight well prepared. A lot of his attacks will knock down and is surprisingly fast as well. He can also hide in the bathroom stalls and then try and land a surprise attack on Chuck, which is pretty brutal. Like Snowflake, any survivors you bring in here are sure to be killed almost immediately, so leave them outside. Thankfully though, for some reason, Brandon will not attack the survivor he has hostage, so you're free to leave and run into the casino to try and get some heals off before coming back. His fight is very reminiscent of Cliff from the original, hiding in the shadows and performing sneak attacks. A bit of a letdown that one of the better fights in the game is a slight rehash of something we've already seen, but we'll get to that later. After defeating Brandon, he stumbles into a bathroom stall, which unfortunately was the same one housing the zombie he wanted to use to kill the survivor. He gets bitten and, realizing what's happened, opts to slit his own throat to prevent reanimation. Kind of odd how he was initially all on board with everyone being zombies, but the second it happens to him he unplugs some life, but I guess he finally came to his senses and realized that that's a fucking stupid idea. Afterwards you can save the survivor, but there isn't much else to the fight unfortunately. You can't get his weapon and he doesn't unlock anything too special, but his fight is still fun regardless. His theme is Eon by Cell Dweller, which only plays a shortened version in-game. I totally recommend listening to the full version though, it's stupidly good. Overall, I quite like Brandon. I think his fight is a fun challenge that doesn't feel totally unfair and is a good test for players and their skills at this point in the game. Visually, I really like this fight. The lighting and the framing in his intro cutscene and the aesthetic of the arena and his character in general, it all lands pretty well. However, his fight being just a little simple and very reminiscent of something we've already seen before do bring it down a bit. Thankfully it's not too bad, but if Brandon started going on about the Vietnam War and having PTSD, maybe I'd be singing a different tune. Next up is Chef Antoine, who's a fan favorite. Taking place in the food court during the mission Tastes Like Chicken, Antoine can be seen creating the meal of a lifetime, when he notices Chuck, thinking he's the reporter that he's been waiting for. It's revealed that the secret ingredient for the meal of a lifetime is human meat, with a woman seen locked hostage in the freezer. When Chuck tells him he's not who he thinks he is and insults his food, Antoine gets enraged and attacks him.
This could still be a once-in-a-lifetime meal, so sit, relax. Antoine will make you dinner.
Antoine is a great fight, and has a variety of different culinary attacks to use that make this one of the harder fights in the game. His most common attack will be running at you, frying pan firmly grasped in hand, and beat you over the head with it, causing a knockdown. If there's enough distance, he'll resort to throwing plates, pans, and cleavers at Chuck, while making a restaurant-related joke. If he throws a pan at you, it will knock you down. A cleaver will also knock you down, while plates will only stun you. Sometimes a bug can occur where the frying pan thinks it's in Hitman 3 and just fucking changes direction mid-flight to home in on Chuck. If Chuck is knocked down, there's also a chance that Antoine will run over and stuff an apple in Chuck's mouth, causing a QTE to free yourself. Antoine has a cool mechanic as well where if you shoot at him with a firearm, he'll put his pan up to try and deflect the bullet. You can't damage him while he does this. It's cool because it's trying to teach you that you shouldn't just mag dump with your LMG for every fight, but you can also circumvent this pretty easily, so yeah, you know. The most notable aspect of this fight is his obsession with healing. After attacking or taking damage, Antoine will make a beeline for the nearest food station in the restaurant and start healing. This leaves him highly vulnerable, however, and you can usually get more damage in than what he heals, so it's not nearly as annoying as you might think. He's also pretty slow, at least compared to Brandon, so keeping up with him is easy enough. There's not really much to the fight. Just try and stay alive and take advantage of when he tries to heal to really lay some damage on. You can get a ton of damage in per healing cycle, and if you need to heal, don't forget, you're literally in the fucking food court. That's not really an issue. After defeating him, he's seen trying to back off from Chuck using the counter as support, but in doing so, slips and has his whole arm and then head plunge into the boiling hot fryer, screaming in immense pain as he dies. You can then go into the freezer and untie the hostage he had, but won't go with you unless you find another survivor nearby. Antoine's theme is Own Little World, yet again, by Cell Dweller, which, yet again, is a fucking banger of a song, which I really love. Antoine is a pretty hard fight, but I genuinely think it's a very fair one. Sure, you face him very early on, but if you can handle Brandon, you can absolutely handle Antoine. People cite his health regeneration mechanic as unfair, but it's not that bad, especially in 2 when there's no damage cap. However, his aesthetic, personality, theme, and difficulty are all what make him so memorable, and a lot of people's favorite fight, me included. While he doesn't drop anything special, sometimes the overall fight can really outweigh this. Randy Tugman is up next and appears in the mission Here Comes the Groom, where Chuck is alerted to a man dragging a woman into a local chapel. As Chuck enters, he sees a man tied up hostage and a crying bride, and this disgusting fucking thing. The man begs Randall to let them go, to which he replies that he prefers Randy, and to stop stalling and get on with the ceremony. As the bride tries to escape, she's restrained, and Randy tells her the other ones didn't mean anything to him, as it pans over to a dead bride in the back row. Randy says he's done waiting until marriage to have sex, and he can't wait, revving his chainsaw in a very suggestive manner. The man notices Chuck in the chapel and calls out for help, and as Randy turns around, slices straight through his abdomen, accusing Chuck of trying to ruin the happiest day of his life, prompting the fight. This fight is okay. There's a lot about it that works, but it's really brought down by being in one of the smallest and hardest to navigate boss arenas in the game. For such a massive fucking object, Randy is still pretty fast, and will commonly charge at Chuck with his giant ping chainsaw at the ready. If you manage to keep Randy running for too long, he'll eventually slow down and run out of breath, allowing you to get some damage in. If Chuck's too close, he'll slash at you with said chainsaw, or hit the most pussy ass slap I've ever seen in history that still manages to knock you down. Anytime Randy knocks you down, he can be seen taunting Chuck by thrusting his chainsaw. The most common way to beat this fight is to continually jump between the pews of the chapel and have Randy run out of breath, as his pathfinding is akin to that of a PS1 game. Don't let his AI fool you though, he can dish out a lot of damage really quickly, and while there is food outside in the Silver Strip, it isn't easy to get to in the heat of the moment, so make sure you plan accordingly. Also, if you shoot Randy in his big pig balls, that will cause him to keel over in pain, which can really let you get some damage in. After smashing Randy's balls in with the defiler, he'll fall to the floor in pain, his vision becoming blurry. He sees a silhouette of the bride walking towards him, and as he contemplates how good they would have been together, as she gets closer, it's actually the now undead bride who eats him before he even has time to react.
You may now kiss the bride.
Oh my god.
Chuck drops another banger one-liner before saving the living bride and taking her back to the security room. Randy also drops a giant ping chainsaw for Chuck to use, which can be fun, but the regular combo weapons are just more engaging and more rewarding to use anyway. Randy's fight theme is Shiny by Blue Starly, which is one of my personal favorite themes in the game. It's simple, but something about it is extremely addicting. Randy is a pretty okay fight, and while a lot of other people say they love this fight, I feel it just falls a little short. I like the theming of the fight. It's very clearly meant to be a play on the stereotype of a Vegas wedding, and the framing of the fight taking place in a chapel, and Randy himself absolutely stands out and is very memorable. However, because the main strategy is jump between the pews until he gets tired, the engagement factor really isn't there for me, at least compared to what we fought already. As well as that, we kind of already saw the perverted sex pest using the outbreak as an excuse to carry out their own selfish desires. In fairness though, Dead Rising 3 also has a sex fight, but we'll get there. The same can also be said for the next psychopath, Slappy. In the mission, everyone knows Slappy, a mascot for a children's clothing store who was about to go on a date with the woman who wears the accompanying Susie mascot costume, before she was killed during the initial outbreak. He then vows to find the man who caused this outbreak before encountering Chuck in the Palisades Mall, who we saw on TV as the main culprit. Chuck attempts to explain that he had nothing to do with it, but Slappy isn't having it, blaming Chuck before getting his dual flamethrowers out to attack. This fight can be pretty overwhelming, as Slappy is skating around the arena, spewing out fire with wild abandon, and if you can't stop him, he'll eventually stop himself and shoot fireballs at Chuck, which can do some pretty heavy damage and knock him down as well. If you do knock Slappy down, once he gets up, he'll spin around and spew fire in a giant circle like a Beyblade, covering a large area. If you're too close to Slappy for too long, he can then stuff a giant Slappy mask on Chuck's head, forcing him into a QTE to take it off. You can use a water gun to stun Slappy to get some free damage in, but there's a much cheaper way to beat this fight. Slappy can be cheesed very easily, so much so that it's almost unfair. Since he's skating at you and he's spewing flames to his left and right, you can just jump kick him down the center lane in the head with minimal resistance, which will sit him flat on his ass, stunned. You can then get some good damage in here, and if you don't manage to kill him, you have ample time to get out of range of a spin attack. Once his attack is over, you can just jump kick him again, before he even has a chance to attack and stun him again. It almost feels like cheating. Thematically, Slappy is a little different than other Psychopaths as well. As while most have totally lost their grip on reality, Slappy seems to be actually quite sane, fully aware of the situation at hand. It can be said that he utilizes the Slappy persona as a coping mechanism for the trauma of the outbreak, which does make sense. It's very similar to Adam in the sense that they are aware enough of the situation, but still not entirely right in the head. After defeating Slappy, he's seen crawling towards the corpse of Susie before dying right next to her, telling her he'll be there to pick her up for that date soon.
Just a minute. Be right there. Don't worry, kids. Slappy will live forever.
Defeating Slappy will grant Chuck the combo card for the flamethrower, and one will now respawn in the Palisades Mall indefinitely. The flamethrower is very mediocre at first glance, as it literally lasts like 5 seconds before breaking, so tap firing it in crowds is the most effective way to use it. Now it goes from very mediocre to, mediocre. Slappy's fight theme is Mascot from the game's original soundtrack, which I wasn't fond of originally, but as I listened to it more, I found myself really liking it. It reminds me of something you'd hear in Crash Twinsanity almost. Slappy is not my favourite fight. While others cite Slappy as being one of the best in the game, I disagree. While I do quite like his theming and ideas, I've already seen it. In the last game, he's a mall mascot who's extremely agile and dual wields 2 dangerous weapons with an element of fire to his attacks. Does this sound fucking familiar to anyone at all? I know he was entirely different weapons and all that, but it's undeniable that it's extremely similar to Adam. I get why people like him, but for me, it just doesn't really land. Or maybe I'm just nitpicking and biased because I got terrified of a strawberry shortcake mascot in my local mall when I was a kid. Yes, that is a factor into my Slappy verdict. I see why people like him, but personally, not my thing. And if I see Strawberry Shortcake again, I'm fucking beating her ass. Up next is a mandatory fight, Amber and Crystal, taking place during case 4-1, The Source. After stopping TK from robbing the city, Rebecca tells us to meet with her and The Source at Shoal nightclub in the Yucatan Casino. As we arrive, the club is empty, and the door is locked behind Chuck. Crystal and Amber emerge, revealing that they were the source that sent Channel 6 Action News the fabricated video of Chuck causing the outbreak. Amber has Rebecca held hostage, and she's thrown to the ground as the twins ready their swords to kill Chuck. Amber and Crystal are a pretty cool fight, as it functions similar to that of Ornstein and Smo from Dark Souls 1, except it doesn't make me even nearly as horny. Amber and Crystal have the same attacks, where they'll slice at Chuck then run off, slide into him, taunt him, and overall just be a little slippery and hard to pin down. They're fast, and avoiding their damage can be pretty tough. Make sure to come prepared with some heals. While there are some cocktails in the club, don't forget that drinking 3 of them has Chuck splatter his guts up all over the dance floor unless you got the magazine or the sports fan outfit, so be careful. There's a couple of different strategies you can use here, but my personal favourite is getting the moose head from the food court and just running rampant in the club hoping I run into one of them so much that they die, drive-by style. It can be pretty frustrating, especially when they both actually get a fucking clue and gang up on you instead of going in after you one at a time, but as long as you keep moving, it shouldn't be too tough. Once you manage to take one down, whichever twin is still alive will slump over the corpse of the other, lamenting their death, as the other half is now gone. They vow that Chuck will not leave Fortune City alive, and just as you think that Phase 2 is about to kick in and she absorbs all her power and becomes a fucking super ninja,
I'll never be complete again. Never!
The other takes her own life in order to be with her sister again. Afterwards, Chuck unties Rebecca as they plan their next move. The twins will then drop their katana swords, which is one of the better non-combo weapons in the game personally. They're effectively just reskinned laser swords, but with the benefit of being able to be boosted by magazines. The battle theme is their own original theme from the game's soundtrack, which takes me back to my clubbing days that lasted all of 2 weeks before I realized how much of a fucking scam that shit is. Still, it's pretty good and fits them and the characterization pretty perfectly. I enjoy this fight between the twins a lot. It's not too difficult and it has a really cool setting. While I hate clubs in real life, I can't deny that I love how they look in video games. I also like how it's a subversion of the expectation that you'd need to beat both of them, where you only have to kill one. That's why it's important to just focus on one twin so you're not wasting your time. While I wish it was a bit more difficult, I can understand why it wasn't. As it's necessary to beat the game, they probably didn't want people to feel like they were soft locked here and couldn't progress. Following two of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in a video game, we have Carl Schliff. And just fucking look at this thing. He's a mailman appearing in the mission Mail Order Zombrex, who's never failed at his job and doesn't intend to change that even during the outbreak. Chuck finds him in the Royal Flush Plaza trying to complete a delivery to continue his route. Carl notices Chuck and tries to have him sign off on the delivery just so he can keep going. Chuck agrees, and as he's about to take the package, Carl recognizes the name, remembering the news report citing him as the source of the outbreak. Carl then hands Chuck a Ted Kaczynski special before trying to flee. Chuck, realizing that it's a bomb, throws the package into his mailmobile, stopping Carl in his tracks, as the explosion sends mail everywhere. Carl then brandishes his shotgun and prepares to deliver a buckshot round to his intended recipient.
Cena, you will not bring down my postal service! You are going to pay!
Carl is very similar to Paul from the original, and when I say similar, it's nearly 1-to-1. He spends majority of the fight running away from Chuck, throwing mail bombs behind him that explode in Chuck's face, causing some decent damage and usually throwing Chuck a fair way away. Once the distance is great enough, Carl will take aim with his shotgun and fire a barrage of shots, which will knock Chuck down if they hit him, and if Chuck's too close, Carl will slap him with the butt of his shotgun. After Carl's volley of shots, the recoil will have him stagger backwards, giving you a chance to get some damage in. As it's similar to Paul, there's really not much else to the fight. Trying to keep up with him will be a bit of a struggle if you haven't gotten your speed stat up, or you don't have any quick step. It's more annoying than anything. There really isn't much else to say. Carl is very simple: avoid the bombs, avoid the shotgun volley, smash his head into a fine red mist. After defeating him, Carl is seen crawling on the ground trying to get away from Chuck. Chuck picks up the original package, which was a delivery of Zombrex. Carl gets his clipboard out and signs off on the delivery before taking out a mail bomb, holding it tight. As we come back to the game, Carl explodes. Fucking stupid. The reward for doing this mission is free Zombrex, so it's definitely worth doing, but there isn't much else to it. It's a pretty simple fight. His fight theme is Postman, another original song from the game's soundtrack, which while simple, is pretty damn good. Carl is inoffensive. There's nothing really that notable about him. His personality is the only thing setting him apart, but he comes and goes very quickly with very little fanfare. At least you get Zombrex for beating him, so that's good, but this fight being almost a spitting image of something you've already seen is a little disappointing. Being fair though, really what else could they have done with this idea? Why the fuck did they make him so fucking ugly? Seymour Redding is our next psychopath, a security officer who's taken the outbreak as an opportunity to live out his own fantasy of being the town sheriff. Located in South Plaza during the mission What Would John Wayne Do?, Chuck wanders through the plaza seeing bodies hanging from the scaffolding before Seymour makes his grand appearance, taunting a man with a bag over his head. He asks the man to beg for his life as the man claims he was just trying to find some food. Chuck calls out, which has Seymour accuse him immediately of being another trespasser. He strokes his own John Wayne-shaped ego dick, saying that he's the big man in town, and when Chuck tries to reason with him, cuts him off saying that he hasn't got a badge, therefore he's got no power. Everyone has to listen to him. He can't be pushed around anymore. His word is law.
If I say dance, you dance!
Admittedly, Seymour is a pretty easy fight, but he has a really cool mechanic that I like that throws the strategy of just use the LMG and mag dump out the fucking window. If you try to use a gun of any kind on Seymour, he'll shoot the weapon out of your hand, effectively forcing you to engage in a melee fight. Seymour can dish out some good damage, and most of his melee attacks from his baton will knock you down when they hit. If you're out of range, he'll whip out a 6-shooter to easily tack some extra damage on, or lasso you like cattle towards him, forcing you into a QTE. You very well may think, the scaffolding shall keep me safe, but if you know anything about a Dead Rising game, if a Psychopath fight has scaffolding, your ass better not even fucking think about getting on that shit. Seymour will get out his lasso and pull you down back to ground level. So, stay in melee range, work on your weaves, and slice his torso open with your comically large pair of boxing gloves with knives taped to them. Or break his AI by going up a little too high on the scaffolding and just mag dump. Never change. Never change, Chuck. After beating him, Seymour attempts to climb the scaffolding again, turning on a nearby saw by accident. As he climbs, he states,
I'm twice the man you are.
As Chuck turns the saw off, he drops another one-liner,
I saw what you did there.
and the fight is over. Seymour drops his iconic 6-shooter, which has 60 fucking shots in it. You know, I get it, given the system of the games not having reloading or anything, it would be awful if this just had 6 shots and it was over, but 60 is fucking hilarious. It's a fun weapon though, it causes heads to explode and can deal pretty decent damage. Seymour's fight theme is an instrumental of I Believe You from, of course, Cell Dweller, which legit is a top 3 music track in the game. It's seriously fantastic. Seymour is pretty good. While he's not the toughest, he can still put up a good fight. And shooting firearms out of your hand is a great mechanic, like Antoine, that forces you to actually engage with the fight, rather than just sit back and try and mag dump. Up next, the Militiamen. I really fucking hate these guys. They are really fucking annoying. The Militiamen is comprised of 4 rednecks, Dietz Hartman, O'Flaherty, Johnny James, and Derek Duggan. They first appear on 9 AM on the 3rd day. Once you walk out into Fortune Park, a cutscene plays out where an innocent man is domed by an Orpo down mid-doors. Dietz makes the comment that this is great target practice, and that America was tainted by the whiners of the country letting the zombies in, as well as foreigners and socialists, pansies, floozies, bureaucrats, liberals, and half-assed conservatives, and that all these groups must be removed to get America back on track. When was this fucking game made again? They plan to clean this country up, one city at a time, and eliminate the threat to America and start again. They're very reminiscent of the convicts from the original, but are far more annoying because it's not 3 dickheads traveling in a jeep, it's 4 dickheads spread out throughout Fortune Park with sniper rifles that knock down pretty much instantly. It's very frustrating if you're not prepared, and makes Fortune Park fucking impossible to navigate once they've come into the game, and essentially forces you to deal with them or avoid Fortune Park altogether. The upside is, these 4 idiots do not respawn once you kill them. These 4 assholes almost feel unfair to fight, considering they range you out very easily, do a lot of damage, and annoy the shit out of you by forcing your ass to the ground every 3 seconds. Once you do get close to them, they can still floor your ass, but once you get within breathing distance, they'll pull out their machetes and go to town. If you move out of melee range, they'll then get their rifle out and try to snipe you again, which you can exploit to have them in an infinite loop of just getting the weapon out, swinging, missing, and repeating. Sounds simple enough, and just make sure you have some painkiller and a lot of food, because you can very easily get overwhelmed. And don't forget, there's fucking 4 of them. Do not take survivors out into Fortune Park once these 4 are active. They will just legit die faster than you can fucking blink. Thankfully, all 4 of them don't spawn at once. If they did, that would genuinely be so fucking unfair and unfun to fight. Sometimes a bug can occur where they just don't stop firing. They rapid fire their rifles like they have the fucking infinity bandana on. It's absurd when it happens. Their theme is, I guess, militiamen from the OST. It's great at conveying the idea of a looming threat, but you just had fucking Cell Dweller in this shit, man, come on. They are really annoying, but in terms of being an obstacle for the player to overcome in a big open part of the map, they fit pretty well. Theming wise, they're also perfectly infuriating and really made you want to bash these fucking dudes' heads in. BB Love is next and is a little different from what we're used to, which I really like. Taking place in the Slot Ranch Casino in the mission One Hit Wonder, Chuck notices a crowd of people seemingly held hostage around the performance stage, as BB takes to the limelight excited to perform, as her comeback tour will be fantastic. Chuck pays no mind to her and goes to untie the hostages, when they reveal that they all have bombs strapped to the bottom of their tables, and if they're freed, BB will fucking blow them up. She finally takes notice of Chuck, asking if he's the new crew or another crazed fan, and asks him to run some errands so that she can start the show.
Before we get started, I'm not sure if I can take waiting anymore. I get explosive when I have to wait.
She'll ask Chuck for a drink, which is easy, you're in a casino, and then tells him to put on a nice tuxedo, which is located right outside the Royal Flush Plaza exit connected to the Slot Ranch Casino. Also very easy. She'll then ask Chuck to gather some fans around the stage before she can start performing. This is done by gathering some of the firecrackers backstage and throwing them near the stage, which will attract zombies. You may be noticing we're not actually fighting her, because if you touch her once, she detonates the bombs and everyone fucking dies. So, once you've gathered enough adoring fans, the show can begin. You then do a rhythm game to time the pyrotechnics in time with BB's performance, and you know damn well your boy is a sucker for this shit. I fucking love rhythm games, man. After completing the minigame, BB will be ecstatic, claiming that Chuck is the best stage manager ever, with a nice ass as well. She's so excited and happy that her fans love her that she falls back first into a crowd of adoring zombies. Now, somehow, she isn't immediately killed and can actually be saved. I'm not gonna lie, if I was any of these three people and I saw the guy who saved me just save the woman who was threatening to blow me to high hell and back, I wouldn't join this guy at all. The mission is a really great PP boost, as escorting everyone back plus the Psychopath defeat bonus nets you around 235,000 PP, and you don't even have to fight anyone. There's nothing else to it, that's it. It's a fun little departure from the norm of what a Psychopath fight is, that still sticks in line with being grounded enough to not totally make you question whether or not they give a shit anymore. I absolutely have to give credit to the voice actor for BB here, Patricia Drake. She does a fucking phenomenal job as BB, and has a great voice for this character. A lot of the voice actors for the Psychopaths deserve credit for their performances. I regret now not doing it in the original video because the performances there were fucking fantastic. Kim My Guest, Alex Fernandez, Greg Berger, Steve Blum, Philip Tanzini, Peter Renaday, John Kassir, the GOAT, Gabriel Olds, Adam D. Clark, Marty Belafsky, Jason Spizak, Carol Barker-Rita, Michael Yana, David Baron, Dave Wittenberg, James Mathis III, Bill fucking Farmer, Brad Dryborough, Ben Cotton, Sam Vincent, Peter Fleming, Paul Dobson, Darren A. Herbert, Jason Simpson, Alessandro Giuliani, Matt Lee, Alex Zahara, John Murphy, Brad Swaley, Doug Abrahams, Alan Marriott, Gabe Kuth, Heather Doickson, Laura Gilchrist, Philip Maurice Hayes, and Robin Ross. All of these people from both 1 and 2 do such a phenomenal job with their roles and are a part of the reason why people remember these characters so fondly. Anyway, I like BB. It's different, but not so different that it feels out of place. The next fight is against TK's helicopter as he attempts to escape during Case 5-1, the getaway. Chuck and Rebecca stake out on top of the bunker to try and find where TK's helicopter will be landing and try and stop him. After hours of looking, they spot a helicopter landing on the Fortune City Hotel and book it there to try and stop him. TK attempts to flee before Chuck manages to hook a winch onto the helicopter to prevent his escape. This is one of those moments where the whole action movie star thing is really exemplified. Like, I think it's badass, but Chuck feels one step away from holding the helicopter back with his bare hands like Captain fucking America. Now, Chuck must ground the helicopter to prevent TK's escape. This fight is very easy. You just need to dodge when the winch comes back around, avoid the gunfire, which can be a little difficult, and once the winch light comes on green, press the button to lower the helicopter. At this point, you'll need to throw some of the items in the arena onto the helicopter blades to deal massive damage to it. Rinse and repeat. Or, you could absolutely not cheese it by using a toy spitball gun and have the fight be over before it actually really even begins. After stopping the chopper, it starts to malfunction, and TK falls out of the helicopter before crashing onto the roof of the hotel, burning all of his stolen money in the process. Chuck and Rebecca take TK back to the safe house to make sure he pays for his crimes. Nothing really special. It's different at least, but nothing to really write home about. However, it's still somewhat plausible. It's not a total immersion breaker. It's fun, but comes and goes. Up next, we have a top tier fight. Roger and Reed, located in the Atlantica casino during the mission World's Most Dangerous Trick. A performance seems to be underway in the casino, and as Chuck enters, he sees two magicians bringing out a woman held hostage to perform one of the most famous tricks in the book, sawing the person in half. As expected, it isn't done by having the talent move the body while they're in the box to create the illusion of cutting someone in half. No, they just kill this woman and then get pissed off about it. Chuck points out the blisteringly obvious,
That's not magic. She's dead.
Reed gets even more annoyed with the idea that Chuck is criticizing him, stating that they have a trick ready just for him.
You just want to tear us down, like the others, don't you? Well, we just so happen to have a very special trick just for you. It's a little disappearing trick. You'd be the perfect volunteer. The ending is to die for!
This is another two-person fight, with Roger being equipped with two curved swords and Reed having a giant purple rocket launcher. This can be a really difficult fight as both Roger and Reed complement each other really well, but in some ways also work against each other. Roger will employ a hit and run tactic mainly, running in and slashing about before running off to leave Reed an opening. If you're too close to Reed, he'll swing at you with his rocket launcher and even charge at you as well, both of which will knock you down to the floor and cause a lot of damage. Once at a bit more distance, he'll use the rocket launcher to damage Chuck, which also stuns him. By this point, this gives Roger the chance to come in and get some easy free damage off of you. This also makes Chuck drop whatever weapon he has equipped, so you're pretty much defenseless. The interesting part is that Reed's rocket launcher shots also stun Roger, and always stun him for much longer than what Chuck is stunned for. This way you can use Reed to really easily kill Roger and make it more even. However, this means you've got to keep both of them close by, and if they're close enough together, they can pretty much just stun lock you, making it hard to escape. It's a bit harder to just damage boost through all of it, and it somewhat forces you to play a little smarter than what you usually do in these psychopath fights. Unlike Amber and Crystal, you do have to defeat both of them. Once you manage to take them both down, Roger can be seen crawling over to a dying Reed, and as you think they'll share one final tender moment together,
I've always wanted to do that.
Roger and Reed drop their respective weapons, a magician's sword and a rocket launcher, which also gives you the combo card for it. The rocket launcher that Reed drops is unique in the sense that it has more ammo than the combo weapon variant, which is really what all psychopaths should have done. They should have given you a cool new combo weapon and a unique variant of that weapon that is different to the one you can craft yourself that respawns where you fought them. There really isn't any other reason to take a weapon a psychopath drops, as some of the regular combo weapons are just far better. The fight theme for Roger and Reed is Switchback, Detroit 2000 by, who would have fucking guessed, Cell Dweller. This is a remix of their own song, Switchback. Both are total headbangers. Roger and Reed has to be one of my favorite fights in the whole game. It's a fun challenge for this point in the game, and the presentation and aesthetic of this fight is really well done. It's clear that it's a reference to the idea of Vegas performers. Siegfried and Roy come to mind due to their look, and the dynamic between them is reminiscent of Penn and Teller. While it's obvious, it feels more natural to have a Penn and Teller reference in a game taking place in a Vegas setting than being shoehorned in because the director really likes magic and never wants you to fucking forget it. I still remember that Borderlands 3 presentation, Randy. I never fucking forgot it. Regardless, it's a great fight and I really like it, and I think the way the fight works complements their characterization really well. Reed wants all the glory and just does whatever, even if it hurts Roger in the process, who might even be doing all the heavy lifting. A great fight with great presentation and mechanics that perfectly fit the personalities of the characters in it. What more can you really want? At this point, we don't have many more Psychopaths left, so don't lose focus, we're gonna try and speed through it. Up next is a mandatory fight with Sergeant Dwight Boykin, taking place in the Case 6-2, Last Stand. After the military rolls in to conduct cleanup and gather the survivors, things take a dramatic turn for the worse as the zombies mutate into something Boykin's squad was not prepared for. As they almost seem to make a game out of killing the weak and feeble zombies, a gas begins to seep out from the ground, making the zombies far stronger and durable than what they were previously. Boykin's whole squad is wiped out, as he watches on in horror seeing his men die before him. This completely breaks his mind as he gets into a Humvee to escape as the last man standing. He escapes into the underground maintenance tunnels where Rebecca is seen also following him. The remaining survivors at the safe house watch on in horror as Sullivan tries to reassure everyone that a second rescue attempt will occur in a day's time. Stacy gets rightly suspicious of Sullivan's answer and is shut down by the knowledge that if the second attempt fails, Fortune City will be firebombed. Despite protests from Katie, Chuck ventures off into the underground to rescue Rebecca. After arriving in the underground, Chuck is met with the sight of Boykin suffering from his psyche breaking. He still believes that his squad is alive and fighting off the horde. He's taken Rebecca hostage, and Chuck realizes that he has to kill Boykin to rescue her, but he's not going down without a fight. Boykin is one of the toughest psychopaths in the game, which is fair for being one of the last fights in the game too. His attacks can deal some serious damage, with his most frustrating attack being a melee attack that knocks Chuck down, which then locks Chuck onto the ground, allowing Boykin for a follow-up with a volley of shots from his LMG before either running off or picking him up and throwing him away like fucking garbage. This sequence does a fuck ton of damage, so you best believe you're going to be downing painkillers and energizers like no fucking tomorrow. He's slippery and while running away can throw grenades to keep Chuck at bay. If you're fast enough, you can actually pick up the grenade and throw it back at Boykin, although it's likely just easier to run away from it. He can also retreat into the back of the room and spray out an impossible amount of bullets panning from side to side, which can easily be avoided. His LMG can be pretty deadly from mid-range, and long range it's no slouch either. You can use the cover of the pillars to try and get a reprieve, but he's more than likely just going to close the distance and smack the fuck out of you. One of your best chances to get some damage in is when he's reloading, which he will announce like he's hosting a fucking baseball game, so you know exactly when to rush in. Reloading! An interesting aspect of this fight is that there are a few moments where Boykin will leave himself open to attack due to a trauma response. You can see him attacking already dead zombies, firing at the corpses, and even talking to his dead squad, all times leaving him vulnerable to attacks if you're close enough. It's details like that which makes Psychopaths fun to fight, as it makes them more than just health bars. After defeating him, Chuck rescues Rebecca from the Humvee, before Boykin pulls out a grenade, stating that he won't let a worthless zombie do him in. As Chuck and Rebecca run for cover, the grenade goes off, obliterating Boykin in the process. Chuck and Rebecca take off to make it back to the safe house. He doesn't drop anything unique, it's just another LMG, which is nice to have at least. Boykin's fight theme is Scrape by Blue Starly. Yes, the same one that made Shiny. Scrape is one of my favorite fight themes in the series. It's ridiculous how good it is and how it fits so well with what Boykin has become. Boykin is one of my favorite fights in the game. He's a great challenge that forces you to really work on your game plan to avoid having half of your health melted off by his deadly knockdown mag dump combo. And the fact that it shows you the direct reason as to why he's become a psychopath makes it more sympathetic in a way as well. Sure, being told why a psychopath has become the way they are is fine enough, but actually seeing his descent happen in real time adds a deeper aspect of tragedy to his character. It's a fun fight that I always love playing. After making it back to the safe house and surviving an unexpected and totally not orchestrated breach of zombies and learning the government thinks there are no survivors left in Fortune City and that they're gonna be firebombed, the crew bands together for one last attempt to figure out what the fuck is actually happening here. They look over the footage Rebecca managed to get before her capture and realize the gas was coming from underground, which is where Chuck heads to next to get some answers, starting case 7-2, the only lead. He ventures underground to find an entrance to a secret laboratory that doesn't really seem all that fucking secret, where he can find workers utilizing blast frequency guns to harvest the queens from the zombies. Fighting his way through the guards, he comes face to face with two scientists, discussing how effective the gas has been at accelerating queen harvesting rates. They take notice of Chuck and pull out their pistols to dispatch him. Now, why are we talking about these two? Well, because in the game code, they are indeed classified as psychopaths. These two noodle-necked, skinny-ass, pathetic-looking fucking nerds are psychopaths. There's no strategy I can put forth, nothing to look out for, nothing. Just run up to them and bash the fucking shit out of them with anything and they'll die. They're nothing. They're worthless. They serve
zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Afterwards, Chuck retrieves their laptop and makes his way back to the safe house. Upon arrival, he gives the laptop to Rebecca, who sleuths through the files to find out the truth. Phenotrans was behind the whole thing, manufacturing the outbreak to produce queens to produce Zombrex and therefore raise profits. This revelation is exactly what Chuck needed to clear his name, and this massive scoop Rebecca was looking for. As she goes to call her station to come pick them up and break the story, she's shot point blank in the head by Sullivan. Sullivan is a Phenotrans agent working against our heroes, which, like, yeah, no fucking shit! TK was working with him when he planted the bomb and framed Chuck. Asshole! Before Sullivan can kill Chuck and Katie, he's attacked by Stacy and is forced to flee, letting them die from the firebomb. This kickstarts the final case in the game, the facts, where Chuck needs to find Sullivan and stop him before he can escape. He manages to locate him on the roof of the Yucatan casino where he's preparing for extraction. Chuck condemns him and his work for Phenotrans, where Sullivan then turns around and has his cool as fuck villain monologue, basically calling Chuck a stupid fucking moron and that he killed his wife by starting the Vegas outbreak. This enrages Chuck, where the climax of the game now begins.
Acceptable losses. This wasn't the first time and it won't be the last. You bastard. You did it. You caused the Vegas outbreak too, didn't you? You killed my wife, destroyed my family. Everything that we have done has been absolutely necessary.
Sullivan is by far the toughest fight in the game. He does not hold back, and I love it. Sullivan starts out on top of some scaffolding, who throws flares down at Chuck if he can see him, which leads to a missile from a nearby gunship to land at the flare. This will knock Chuck back a fair way, as well as create holes in the roof that will drop down to ground level. Once you start getting close to the scaffolding, he'll pull out his pistol and take pot shots at you, which I swear this dude loaded this hoe with a pack-a-punch cause damn that shit hit hard. Once you finally manage to make it onto the scaffolding, Sullivan engages in hand-to-hand combat, punching, kicking, charging and throwing Chuck off the scaffolding at any chance he gets. A cool mechanic around Sullivan is that he can body slam Chuck so hard his weapon will fly out of his hand. He basically tries to force you to use barehanded tactics, but if you play smart you can still use your busted combo weapons against him. Or you can just equip the knife gloves or tenderizers and go to town. By far the most frustrating part of this fight is when he throws you off the scaffolding, as if it's angled right you'll fall all the way down to the bottom and have to fight your way back up, only to likely have it happen again. Don't forget, you're on a time limit here. You have to stop this dude. If you do decide to go barehanded, drop kicks and elbow drops are your best friend. The drop kick will stun Sullivan long enough to regain your footing and create some space, and elbow drop seems to have iframes which really help here. He also has an uppercut that will take away one health block. However, there's apparently a bug that allows it to take away all but one health block. These fucking games, man, held together with string and fucking glue and spaghetti. I really recommend stocking up on a ton of painkillers. This shit can get tough. There is some food around the arena, but the gunship fire can blow it up, so keep it in a safe place if you really need it. Once you manage to defeat him, Sullivan quickly regains the upper hand and prepares for Fulton extraction, but, well, we all know how that one goes. Sullivan's fight theme is just his theme from the game's original soundtrack. However, it does a great job of feeling like this is the climax. This is the final fight. This determines whether you make it out of here alive or perish in a fiery hell at the hands of corrupt corporate meddling. It's got a great finality feeling to it, and I really like it. Generic, sure, but if it works, man, it works damn well. I really like the Sullivan fight. It's a great challenge for the end of the game that still allows you to use what you've gathered to your advantage if you can work around his unique properties. It's also pretty climactic. Nothing on the tank from 1, but still does pretty damn well at conveying the same feeling of the last stretch to the end, without going totally overboard in an attempt to one-up its predecessor. Whew, one last fight. Overtime mode returns, and just after the safe house breach, TK attempts to escape in the chaos before being bitten by a stray zombie. Now Chuck has the choice of whether or not to save TK by giving him Zombrex. If you don't give it to him, ending A will play out, leading into Case West, which leads into the canon ending. If you do give TK a dose, Chuck will return to the safe house after defeating Sullivan, with Stacy and Katie nowhere to be found. Chuck ventures inside to find Katie's backpack, assuming the worst has come to fruition. Chuck decides to stay behind and just die. If he doesn't have Katie, there's no reason for him to go on, until the transceiver goes off with TK on the other end of the line. Taunting Chuck once more, he reveals that he kidnapped both Katie and Stacy, and that he's gonna run some errands for him if he ever wants to see them again.
You son of a bitch. If you hurt them, you ready for overtime, Chucky? He said it!
It's largely the same as in Dead Rising 1. Run around the map finding items for TK before bringing them all back to the arena, where TK kidnaps Chuck, refusing to play it safe at this point. Chuck comes to, hanging upside down over a pit of zombies, with Katie and Stacy revealed to be in a very similar position. TK is playing this all as if it was another episode of Terror is Reality, presenting it as if it's still live on the air. Chuck begins to climb up his rope, which pisses TK off. As Chuck makes it to the rafters and begins to reel the two back up, TK appears stopping him, forcing our final confrontation of the game. TK is no pushover, and is pretty challenging. You're stripped of your weapons and forced to scrap with TK barehanded, with a few weapons located around the arena, so you're not totally shit out of luck. The main mechanic of this fight is the Stacy and Katie meter. Throughout the fight, the two are slowly descending into the pit, where Chuck can grab hold of the lever and crank it to raise them back up. TK will attack you pretty much immediately if you try to do this, so it's not as easy as it sounds. TK attacks primarily with his giant novelty looking ass microphone, doing massive overhead swings with poking attacks as well. He can also do this fucking attack where he waggles his mic before swinging. When he's not waggling his wand, he can perform a very powerful charge attack, where TK will charge at Chuck and grab him, continuing to run until he makes contact with the nearest wall. Here, TK will start wailing on Chuck, where you'll need to perform a series of QTEs to defend yourself and get TK off of you. If you run off to some of the other areas to scrounge for weapons or food, TK will activate the pyrotechnics from the floor to try and catch you out. If you attempt to get some high ground to catch a breather, we already know what's going to happen, but TK will pull out a submachine gun to bring you back down to earth. After taking a certain amount of damage, TK will hop over the railings and exit the fight for a brief period of time. This gives you the chance to either heal up or crank Stacy and Katie back up to avoid failing the fight altogether. You'll continue this loop until TK finally goes down. You can beat this fight entirely barehanded. Using the dropkick is a especially effective tactic, but the game doesn't force you to fight barehanded, so why bother with it when it's immediately more satisfying to crack TK's head open with a crowbar. Once you finally beat him, TK falls to the floor, and convinced he's won, Chuck goes over to the crane to get Katie and Stacy back. Before though, TK grabs Chuck by the leg and quickly overpowers him.
You gotta be willing to risk it all if you're ever really gonna win big.
I can't lie, even though I'm not a massive fan of the one-liners, This one goes really fucking hard. Chuck, victorious, finally saves Katie and Stacy, claiming it's all over and that it's time to go home. They all embrace, hold hands, walk off to a new beginning, and TK's theme is TK Overtime from the OST, which initially I thought was kind of lackluster, but in listening to it again, it works really well in terms of incorporating some of the leitmotifs from other themes in the game, mainly Chuck's theme and Stinger. I'm a total sucker for this shit, but it really works well by making it feel more personal by tying it with Chuck's theme. It starts off a little slow, but picks up and really does go pretty fucking hard. While I don't think TK should have been the final boss, I can't deny that he is a good fight. I think Sullivan is the better final boss, but again, this TK fight isn't canon, so I suppose it's alright. It's a decent challenge as TK doesn't really feel like bullshit, like some of the other fights can. He's fair. There's no one attack that you can groan out when you get hit by it or that does a fuck ton of damage. That's just pretty fair. You're not forced to fight barehanded and there's ample food around. It can even feel a little too easy if I'm being honest. It's like they took on a lot of the criticism from the Brock fight and really overcorrected by giving the player lots of tools to make it less frustrating, when in reality the frustration came from needing to do the stupid tank fight every time you fucking died. Aesthetically, I really like it. Stage rafter fights always make me unusually excited. They feel pretty climactic, but let's be honest, nothing is topping that final set piece from Dead Rising 1. However, I can appreciate that the final fight this time around is someone we actually do know. Someone that's been in the game since the very beginning, and we've been given genuine reason to want to beat the shit out of, rather than showing up last minute and just being really unpleasant to talk to. Man. That is every psychopath in Dead Rising 2, and overall, not too bad. There were some definite highs that work really well given the setting, and some lows that kinda just feel like we're retreading old ground and trying to make it look new again. The entirely new ones are definite highlights for me. Antoine, Amber and Crystal, Roger and Reed. Man, I really like those fucking duo fights, huh? And of course, Sullivan. However, I think some of the fights feeling a little too similar compared to the original, and the overall game itself just being easier bring it down a bit for me. But I suppose that's just a side effect of being a sequel. They still function pretty well as a reflection of individuals and their reaction to the outbreak, each with their own distinct issues and trauma that makes them unique from each other. While I think Dead Rising 1 definitely has the more memorable cast of psychopaths, Dead Rising 2 still does pretty well, with the high notes being really fantastic and the lows feeling just like imitations of fights we've already seen, notably Slappy, Carl and Randy as I've said earlier. Leon Bell is also a pretty meh fight, but everyone else is pretty good. Fuck these four fucking guys! I think the weakest fight by far is Carl. He doesn't really have a lot going for him, and the novelty of his aesthetic wears off pretty quickly, and it just ends up kind of being a boring and annoying fight. Plus, just look at this fucking guy. Look at this fucking guy. What the fuck is that? Kill it! Dead Rising 2 doesn't feature an infinity mode, which I can understand, but as it acted as a pseudo sandbox mode, people sorely missed it, especially now with how much more there is to do in the world. What it does have, however, is Terror is Reality Online! Do you care yet? It's basically a party game mode where 4 players compete in various mini-games for top spot. There are 9 total mini-games: Ballbuster, Bounty Hunter, Headache, Master Shafter, Pounds of Flesh, Ramster Ball, Stand Up Zombie, and Zombie Tank, with every match finishing on a match of Slicicles. It looks fun enough to play with your friends here and there, but honestly I'd much rather just play the campaign. Playing in a ranked match, because of fucking course there's a ranked mode, any prize money you earn can actually be used by Chuck in the main game. It's cool, but like I said earlier, there really doesn't feel like there's a lot of incentive to play around with the money system. The game mode had some achievements tied to it as well, but since it's online only and no one fucking plays it anymore, tough shit. In terms of unlockables like the Mega Buster and the Laser Sword from 1, there aren't any here, which I'm not gonna lie, is pretty disappointing. I can understand that combo weapons are as overpowered as they get, but we really couldn't get anything even more overpowered. The only real unlockable that you can consider as such is the Knight Armor, which is directly taken from Ghosts and Goblins and functions similarly. If Chuck equips all 4 pieces of the armor, his health adopts a sick metallic look to it, and gives him some more durability, until he takes too much damage and the armor flies off the same way it does in the game, leaving Chuck in his Sunday best. The armor is a massive letdown, especially considering how much fucking effort you need to go to in order to unlock it. Now, believe me, I wouldn't complain about unlock difficulty if the actual unlock itself was worth the trouble, but when the unlock is effectively painkiller in the form of a hunking heap of shit, I think it's justified. There was also DLC for this game in the form of skill packs, which each come with their own benefits. Initially pre-order bonuses, there were 4 to purchase: Ninja Skills, Psychopath Skills, Soldier of Fortune, and Sports Fan Skills. Ninja Skills required the ninja outfit to work and allowed Chuck to pass through zombies unnoticed, and give swords new attacks, throw speed is increased, and new ninja-like animations are added as well. Psychopath Skills required the Psychopath outfit and increased the damage from Psychopath-related weapons, adds cinematics on weapons like cleavers, increases your damage reduction as well. Soldier of Fortune needs the soldier outfit to work and doubles the ammo of bullet-based firearms, increases firearm damage, increases shooting accuracy, and better headshot accuracy as well, with new animations for the assault rifle, Merc assault rifle, and the LMG. Sports Fan Skills require the Sports Fan outfit to work and increase your running speed, damage with sports-based weapons is increased, more health recovered from eating or drinking, Chuck can no longer get sick from drinking too much alcohol, increased throwing distance, a secondary attack for the football, and higher earnings received when gambling. There's an interesting bug with all of this where Chuck only needs to wear one piece of clothing to get all the benefits. So you'll look like total shit, but you'll be near unstoppable with how many benefits you have. They're fun enough, but I don't really think they're worth the cash. Sure, it's only $12 for all of them, but the only one you realistically can say you'd need would be the Sports Fan pack, since there's just so much going on with it. But you can skip them, they're really not that important.
Konnichiwa, senpai.
Overall, Dead Rising 2 was viewed as a massive improvement over the original, with more ways to kill zombies, more zombies in general, and improvements to the gameplay that made it more approachable for the bigger audience. The more lenient timer, the easier escort missions, the addition of the much requested co-op feature, all of that made it a much easier sell, which was very evident with its post-launch life. Dead Rising 2 was a massive success, selling 2.2 million copies by February of 2011, just under 6 months after release, which for the time, pretty fucking crazy. Critics also gave it generally favourable reviews, saying that while it didn't feel too different from the original, the additions and improvements made created a more enjoyable experience, as well as the vast depth of which players were able to express themselves with cosmetics and weapon choice. Some critiques still stem from things like the timer and the save system, as well as the visuals really not being that good even by 2010 standards. Despite this, it's clear as day that Dead Rising 2 was a fantastic progression of the series. While I do still much prefer the original, I can't deny that Dead Rising 2 did a lot for the franchise, and I still have a lot of fun with it. I'm at least glad in the sense that it kept a lot of the core gameplay mechanics that made the original so unique. It's still a Dead Rising game at its core, but with some changes that made it more palatable for a wider audience. However, as I've said many times in this now comically long video, the writing and characters suffer because the overall tone and atmosphere of the game is trying to adopt a more obviously humorous approach. Of course, stuff like that comes down to personal preference, but as someone who really enjoyed the more serious tone of the original, Dead Rising 2 really doesn't even come close. It's still fine, but it misses a lot of the elements that made the original work so well. So, to answer the question I posed like 2.5 hours ago, no, I don't think Dead Rising 2 laid the foundation for what would become the franchise's downfall. While it does have its issues, and I do have my personal gripes with its tone and story, it's unfair to say that Dead Rising 2 specifically was the franchise's downfall. As mentioned previously, Case West was released soon after, which set up the future of Dead Rising and what they would explore in the games to come. There aren't any funny ports or anything like that to talk about this time around, unfortunately, save for one, and I do mean fucking one, Reddit comment that says Dead Rising 2 for Java did exist at some point. I can't find any evidence of this online, but the idea that Capcom was so dedicated to the Java platform they made Dead Rising 2 and Dead Rising 1 for it is so fucking funny, I can't not believe it. But in short, Dead Rising 2 was a smash fucking hit, and it only looked like it was gonna get better from here on out. If Dead Rising 1 was a strong start for the franchise, Dead Rising 2 appeared to be a strong continuation of that franchise, with the addition of combo weapons changing the course of the franchise forever, and some tweaks made to address the more annoying aspects of the game. Dead Rising looked like it would only keep getting better. But with some of the writing choices, characterization, tonal shift, and unbalanced mix between seriousness and comedy, these were some of the cracks that began to show, and eventually would put this franchise in a nearly decade-long hiatus. But with 2.2 million copies sold in under half a year, Dead Rising showed no signs of slowing down, until we get to Dead Rising 3, where the cracks just got bigger.